Deserts, driving, and derelicts. Did I interrupt you? I gazed over at the table. No, it's just me. She headed to the door, continuing to blot the napkin on her arm. Fifi just had her hair clipped, and her nails are so sharp. She scratched me, by accident, of course, when I picked her up. Do you want me to look at it? I asked. No, I'll be fine. Follow me to Harrison's office. That's where I keep the checks. She walked through the open deck doors. Some stray feathers from her housecoat floated behind her. Harrison? I didn't know who that was. My deceased husband. She stopped in her tracks on the way down the hallway. I guess that's something me and you have in common. She put her hand on the doorknob of the closed door. I guess you checked up on me. I pinched a fake smile, thinking only of a tip. Hank told me who you were after you pushed your little cleaning cart around the house yesterday. She turned the knob. I think it's admirable how you're working your way to pay off your husband's mistakes or misdeeds. X, I said through an exhausted sigh. She opened the door and took a couple of steps in before she flipped on the light and let out a blood-curdling scream before fainting. Camille Braun was sitting behind Harrison's desk in his big leather chair, with a knife stuck in her chest and her eyes open. 1. Thank you for coming in. Allison Gilbert, the young reporter from National Parks of America magazine, greeted me all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. She wore a mid-calf-length red dress with small black polka dots and black sandals. Her brown hair was cut to her chin. We are so glad you agreed to the interview. Follow me. She hurried down the hall at the Daniel Boone National Park office and talked over her shoulder, guiding me to the room where she was going to perform the interview. She sat her bag on the long conference table. Now we can relax. She turned slightly to look at me as she continued to walk down the hall. I have coffee here, along with some donuts. Please, help yourself. I walked over to the coffee bar, catching my shadow in the glass window that overlooked a beautiful area of the national park, and noticed my hair had grown about 2 more sizes on the ride over to the office. That was the problem with curly hair and humidity. The two didn't play nice with each other. Thank you, I said, and pulled a handful of hair to one side over my shoulder. Would you like a cup too? I asked and poured a cup of coffee. That'd be great. Her head was buried in her bag. She dug around for a few more minutes, finally pulling out a camera. You do remember the terms to which I agreed? I wanted to confirm before we got started. Yep. Her head slowly nodded up and down. She fiddled with her phone and sat it down on the table. No particulars about your husband or the Ponzi scheme, but you're okay with talking about how you acquired Happy Trails Campground, bringing it and more tourists to normal during a slow economic time. Ex-husband, I muttered, and walked over to the table, setting down a cup of coffee in front of her, and then walking over to look at the donuts. Right. She pulled in a deep breath. I'm going to tape it on my phone, if that's okay, she said. I like to go back and listen to the interview while I'm writing the piece. I want to make sure I don't leave anything out. Sure. I grabbed one of the glazed donuts and took a modest bite. If I were alone in my camper, I'd just stuff my face with all of it and lick my fingers after. Interview with Mae West, owner of Happy Trails Campground, located deep in Daniel Boone National Park in Normal, Kentucky. She smiled. Normal, she laughed. The tone of her voice had changed into a very professional-sounding one. There's really nothing that's been normal in Happy Trails for many years. I didn't know what she wanted me to say, so I just took a sip of coffee. How did you acquire Happy Trails? She asked. It's no secret that I was married to Paul West. If whoever reads this article in the National Parks magazine hadn't heard of my ex-husband, then they'd been literally living off the land in one of these parks with their head stuck under a rock. Years ago, during his college years, he got possession of the campground. I left out the part that he'd actually made a bet with the original owner, Ron Randall, who now owned the Normal Diner. Ron had made a bet with the young go-getter Paul. Paul was never one to turn down a bet, even when he thought he might lose. In this case, he won. And here I was today. Years later, he gave me the campground. "Gave it to you?" she asked. After Paul went to jail, all of my possessions were seized, except for Happy Trails Campground and the camper where I live, because they were in my name only. There wasn't any sense in reliving the entire story of how my lawyer had broken the bad news to me in his Manhattan office, trading my luxury car keys for a flamingo keychain with a camper key dangling off it. I had no idea Paul had owned a campground. It was a shock to me how years before he deeded the property over to me. Just one of many things I didn't know. In fact, I didn't even know my husband like I thought I did. After I found out that I owned Happy Trails, I made a visit and haven't left. I fell in complete love with camping life and the campground itself. I left out all the in-between stuff, like the shock of my new life and living arrangements. Something I was embarrassed about now, but it truly had been a scary time for me. "You're being modest." Allison scooted up in the chair and rested her forearms on the edge of the conference table. "I want to get to the nitty-gritty. I've talked to a few Happy Trails residents who've made the campground their year-round home. They tell me that Happy Trails was almost uninhabitable. After I did a little digging into your married life, I have to assume it was hard for you to go from a mansion in the Hamptons to a tiny camper." I admit I was taken aback when I pulled into Happy Trails the first time. The Kentucky bluegrass had been burnt up. The lake had a mucky film over it, and the buildings were in bad shape. There was no denying that Happy Trails had come a long way since I moved to Normal a few months ago. I'm happy to say that it's fully back up on its feet, and we are booked for the next 3 seasons. That's fascinating. I mean, you waltz into Normal, this hoity-toity New York City housewife with all the luxuries the world could offer. You walked into a crazy situation where almost all the residents of Happy Trails had been victims of your husband. I didn't waltz. My eyes narrowed as I wondered where this interview was going. She grazed over my comment and continued to look down at her notes. I mean, he didn't pay the manager for years, though he did let her live there for free. It was run down and nothing worked, including the laundry machines. Your husband swindled a lot of Normal residents out of their retirement accounts. How did it feel to be the most hated woman in the town? She smiled like her words were daggers. Well, you've done quite a lot of research. I could have reminded her that I didn't really want to talk about what Paul had done to the people of Normal, but I decided to deal with it head on. Seriously, how many people were reading National Parks of America magazine? I'm fully aware of what Paul did to the people and the town of Normal, especially when a big chunk of their economy comes from the campground. So when I saw what a disarray Happy Trails was in, I decided it was time to make things right with the entire community. That's when you came up with the brilliant social media campaign? She was finally getting to the true reason for the interview. I have to give credit to my friend Abby Fawn. She's the librarian at the Normal County Library. As you pointed out, the laundry machines at Happy Trails weren't working, and, having driven from New York, I needed to do laundry. The memory of my meeting the ladies of the laundry club was very fond. I loved telling the story. I took my laundry to the laundry club. The laundry club is a full-service laundromat located in downtown Normal, correct? She asked. Yes, though it's so much more than that. There's fresh coffee, jigsaw puzzles, a book club. It's like a community. I couldn't stop my smile from growing. That's where I met a group of women I consider my friends. It's like meeting your friends at a coffee shop, only it's a laundromat. Tell me about the women. She seemed to be really interested. First, there's Dottie Swaggart, Queenie French, Abby Fawn, and Bets Hager. Even though I was telling the story to her phone, she was still taking notes. They welcomed me with open arms and really took me under their wing. Abby is the one who took my idea about having some sort of fundraiser to help bring the campground back to what it used to be in its glory days and ran with it. She did all the social media hashtagging, and it just took off. That's what brings us here today. There was so much buzz about the grand reopening of Happy Trails that you ended up booking all the lots for the entire next year. No one even seemed to care that your husband's body floated to the top of the lake. Wasn't he murdered? She had to add in the last part, didn't she? I lowered my eyes and stared at her for a second. She fidgeted a smidgen, as if she realized she was teetering on a fine line. X, I sighed and grabbed another donut. This time I stuffed it in my mouth, just as I heard the camera click. You aren't going to print that one, are you? You're originally from Kentucky. She'd obviously been digging around more than just my married life. My palms started to sweat and itch. Why don't you tell me about that? There's really nothing to tell. It was a lifetime ago. I pinched a smile. I'm happy to say that I'm back in Kentucky and enjoying living at Happy Trails Campground. We are ready for more families to join us for a terrific vacation. I spouted off the office phone number and the website URL, which was also Abby's doings. We have a monthly party where we get together for food and friendship. It's free to the public. This month's is about this late Indian summer we're having, so it has a desert theme. Dottie Swaggart is the social coordinator for Happy Trails. If you look on social media, you'll find all the information you need using #SummerSizzler. Come one, come all. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I know I probably pushed a little too much, but I think everyone is going to love how you completely turned the campground around and brought a feel-good story to normal Kentucky. Allison stood up and gathered her belongings. I ran by the campground earlier and took some photos. I hope you don't mind. Not at all. I took another donut. Please let us know when we're in it so we can frame the article and hang it on the wall in the office. Little did I realize just how many people did subscribe to National Parks of America magazine, but I was soon going to find out. 2. Well, well, well. A shadow cast over my lawn chair from someone standing in the sun's rays. Dottie Swaggart, the manager and social coordinator of Happy Trails, and I had taken a few minutes to enjoy the pleasant early morning warmth by the lake in the campground before the heat of the Indian summer took over in the afternoon. The person dropped a knapsack on the ground next to their feet. If it ain't Maybelline Grant, then my eyes are deceiving me, he said with a heavy southern twang. Lordy, I shielded my eyes from the sun and hoped that it was the hot summer sun playing tricks on my mind. Was it really who I thought it was? I scooted up on my elbows, blinking a few times to try to get the sunspots to go away so I could see clearly. Your eyes are deceiving you. Dottie Swaggart moved the tinfoil-covered piece of cardboard from underneath her chin. She used her fingers to fluff up the curls in her short red hair that had been flattened from laying down. Now pick up that backpack, get out of my sun, and get on the trail to Daniel Boone National Park, right through them trees. Dottie pointed to the tree line behind the lake where many different levels of trails started for the campers of Happy Trails. Every once in a while, we got a stray hiker or two. Satisfied with herself, Dottie laid her head back and put the cardboard back up underneath her chin. Honey, we see all kinds during these Indian summers. She glanced over at me. You know, if I said Indian summer anywhere else than right here, I'd be considered of ill reproach. My eyes adjusted, and sure enough, it was exactly who I thought it was, just a lot older. Go on, Dottie said with some frustration, and flung her hand out. Bobby Ray Bond? I questioned and pushed myself up off the chair. There I stood, face to face with the very person who gave me the money to leave on that Greyhound bus to New York City 12 years ago. Here's Bobby, He held his arms out and put on a funny grin like Jack Nicholson in The Shining. We'd spent many nights watching The Shining over and over. Bobby did the best impersonation of Jack Nicholson, down to the crazy eyes. "Bobby!" I squealed and threw my arms around him. It didn't take long for my nose to catch up to his bad body odor. I took a step back. With my hands on my hips and a smile on my face, I asked, "What on earth are you doing here?" Bobby Ray had on a pair of dirty jeans and a filthy white t-shirt with the neck stretched out. He had brown eyes that used to match his head full of brown hair, but time seemed to have taken that away from him, leaving him a thin comb-over. "I came to see my one true Maybelline," he winked. "Look at you, all grown up and stuff, running a campground, back in Kentucky. Then I went and Googled you down at the community center. Literally almost fainted when I seen all the hashtags with your name. I told everyone that my Maybelline had hit it big time, owning her own campground and all." "Daddy, this is Bobby Ray Bond." I introduced them. Bobby and I were in the same foster family. He was the only one with a good job, and he gave me enough money to not only get a Greyhound bus ticket out of Kentucky, but also the initial payment for flight attendant school. Then it hit me like the stink his body was emitting. It was time to repay the piper. He just so happened to be the one tooting the horn. "How did you find me?" I asked, a bit leery. "You could have knocked my teeth out when I saw your interview in National Parks of America magazine. I said to myself, Bobby Ray, is that our Maybelline Grant? I responded to myself, nah, our Maybelline would have called if she was in Kentucky, because that's what our Maybelline said in the middle of the night before she left." My mouth dried and I gulped. Not that I didn't want to call him, but it was part of my life that I wanted to forget. The more I read it, the more I couldn't believe my eyes. As sure as Shinola, it was my Maybelline Grant that's not only grown up, but has a campground of her very own. He grinned. "Look-ye at you, and look at you." There was some apparent sarcasm in Dottie's response. "You ought to be ashamed of yourself," she said, with a little fire behind her words. She stood up. Her temper was flaring up as bright as her hair. "You coming here and trying to mooch off Mae West now that she's made a name for herself?" Bobby Ray jumped. "Woman, what's wrong with you?" he protested. "Bobby Ray Bond doesn't mooch off no one, especially not Maybelline." His face scrunched up in disapproval of Dottie's accusations. "Don't you be calling me a woman." She jabbed some uppercuts with her hands fisted. I'm sure she'd learned in the strike jazzercise class she'd been taking from Queenie French, one of our friends. "Now, you get on out of here like I told you to earlier." "Hold on." I positioned myself between them, arms outstretched. "Dottie." I put my arms down, straightened my shoulders, and choked out the next words. "If it weren't for Bobby Ray, I'd not be right here where I'm standing." "Mm-hmm," Bobby agreed. "She's right as rain." I gulped back what felt like tears coming up, stinging my nose. What Bobby had done for me so many years ago was a blessing, and it made me cry then, much like it was doing now. "I just can't believe it's you." I wiped a tear from my cheek. He smiled. "I guess I need to stop blubbering and get to work, but I'll get you settled first," I said to Bobby and glanced over at Dottie. She was still glaring at Bobby Ray. "Dottie, I'll meet you in the office in a few minutes. We can get the final details worked out for the summer sizzler." "You mean you ain't had that summer sizzler party I read about in the magazine?" Bobby bounced on the soles of his filthy shoes. "I love me a good party." "You're staying?" Well, crap. Now I couldn't help but wonder if Dottie was right about him coming here for something more than just a short visit. "Yes, I am," he rocked back and forth. "A few days anyways. Bet he hangs around longer." Dottie muttered under her breath as she headed off in the direction of the office at the entrance of the campground. "Bobby, would you like a drink?" I asked, gesturing for him to follow me to my camper. "I've got some homemade sweet tea soaking in the sun since yesterday. I'm figuring that it's probably about ready."
"You're speaking my language, Maybelline,"
he heard behind me. "I don't go by Maybelline anymore. When I moved to New York City, I shortened it to May," I said. "It wasn't because I was trying to escape the name from my past. It was because my mama truly named me after the beauty product. I was so tired of the jokes that came with it. New York was a fresh start, and it was Bobby Ray who I had to thank. Since I'd been back in Kentucky, I'd wondered over several occasions what my life would look like if I'd not left 12 years ago. There was no good to try to figure out the what if, so I'd force my thoughts to something different, like what Ty Randall was doing back in San Francisco. On our way to my camper, I couldn't help but look at Ty Randall's camper. Was he ever going to come back, now that he didn't have to live in Normal since his father had recovered and he didn't have to look after his siblings?
"You sure have a nice place here."
Bobby brought me out of my thoughts. "It wasn't like this at all when I first got here," I said, getting a whiff of Bobby's odor on the downwind, which was probably the only breeze we'd have all day. It was going to be a scorcher. That was Kentucky weather. It was like Mother Nature had a plan, but Father Time was driving and didn't ask for directions. The seasons were all over the place, but it was also one of the things I did miss about Kentucky while I was away, the different seasons and the beauty each brought to the area. The lake was a mess, and there wasn't any grass. I continued to tell him about how I'd taken possession of the campground that was one day away from being shut down by the national park. "I'm sure you know that my ex-husband was Mae West." I took the flamingo keychain out of the pocket of my shorts and unlocked the camper door. I grabbed the jug of sweet sun tea that I'd put on the picnic table outside of my camper yesterday. The color was nice and orange. Perfect.
"I wasn't going to bring it up, but now that you have..."
Bobby took the couple of steps up into the camper.
"I did read about it when I Googled you. Mostly I was hurt that you didn't invite me to the wedding."
"I wish I wasn't invited either," I half joked. "But the good thing is, now I'm back in Kentucky and really enjoying life now." I turned around inside of the camper and reached out to touch his arm. "I'm so glad you are here. Now, it looks like you've had a long day already."
"Do I look that bad?"
He brushed his hands down his dirty clothes.
"I walked here."
"You're kidding me." My jaw dropped completely to the floor. No wonder his shoes were torn up and his clothes were dirty. That had to take days.
"Yep, but you're worth it, Maybelle."
He paused.
"May?"
"I'll get you a big glass filled with ice and tea while you grab a shower in my bathroom, right back there." I gestured to the back of the camper and grabbed a plastic glass to get his tea fixed.
"Are you sure?"
he asked. "Of course. I hope you stay with me while you're here." I knew that I was going to regret that as soon as it came out of my mouth.
"I was hoping you'd say that."
That put a big grin on his face.
"I'll be right out."
"Take your time. I'm actually going to run up to my storage unit. I think I've got some men's clothes in there." I went back to the door. "You'll find everything you need under the sink." He'd already disappeared into the bathroom before I could finish my sentence. Over the past couple of months, I'd invested in a used golf cart to help me get around the campground. Mostly my handyman, Henry, used it. It was perfect for a situation like this. Instead of walking down to the storage unit to grab some old clothes of Paul's for Bobby, I could jump in and drive it up to the storage unit, get the clothes, and be back before he finished showering. Some of my stuff from my previous life was stored in boxes in one of the storage units. Most of the boxes were fancy clothes that I'd yet to sell on eBay. Another awesome thing Abby Fawn had done to initially raise money for the campground, setting up an eBay shop. I wasn't going to be using high heels and sequin dresses around here, so we sold them on eBay for a crazy price and used the money to help fix the washers and dryers. I'd still not gone through all the other boxes that contained knickknacks. If I hadn't missed them by now, I probably never would. Eventually, I'd go through them. It just wasn't high on my priority list. Last time I was in there, I had seen a box labeled Paul's Clothes. It would be good enough for Bobby to wear until I could get downtown and pick up some clothes from the second-hand store for him. I needed to go downtown anyways. The storage units were situated slightly behind the office, covered by big oak trees. There were 10 standard metal units. We had a few campers who paid a yearly lot fee, but only stayed in their campers for a couple of weeks or months each year for vacation. Those residents were the ones who usually rented a storage unit for their golf carts or other things they didn't want to store in their campers. I put the key into the lock and twisted it until I heard the click. The doors were like a garage door that lifted up and down. I bent down and lifted it until I heard it lock in place at the top so the thing wouldn't fall down on me. I'd learned my lesson the hard way. Paul's box was in the back left corner. I dragged it to the front of the unit. Anger swelled up inside of me when I got a whiff of Paul's cologne. I'd know that smell anywhere. Gucci for men. I dug through the box until I reached a couple of short sleeves. It was hot as Haiti here, and the long sleeves would roast Bobby Ray like a s'more.
You gonna let him stay here?
Dottie caught me off guard. I looked back at her, standing in the doorway of the unit, with a cigarette stuck in the corner of her lip.
He's here to use you.
You scared me. I held the polo shirt up to my chest to see if it would fit Bobby. Yes, I'm going to let him stay here with me. He's not here to use me.
Mae, I'm telling you, I've seen his kind before. He's like a booger on your finger. You won't be able to thump him off,
she warned in a way only she'd be able to say it. He's only passing through. Well, technically, he didn't say that, but it was good enough to get Dottie off my back until I did figure out just how long he was staying. I do owe him.
Then give him the money back.
She took the cig out of her mouth and pointed her finger at me.
How much did he give you?
She asked. It was about $3,000. I went back to the box and dug down deeper until I found a pair of khaki pants. I held them up in the air. These will do until I can get some shorts at the second-hand store. I draped them over my arm.
I'm telling you,
she said when I walked by her to leave the storage unit.
He's got more guts than you can hang on a fence, showing up here like that.
Wait. I stopped and motioned her to come out so I could put down the storage door. I thought it was commonplace to just show up unannounced around here.
Only when you don't want a favor, she spat. Good news, we had 4 more calls about the one cancellation. Shoo-wee!
She pulled a napkin from her bra and wiped her brow before she started to dab her chest with it and put it back.
It's gonna be a killer.
I'll see you later. I closed the box back up and decided to leave it where it was. The garage door wheels squealed when I pulled it back down to close and lock it. I got into the golf cart and took off, waving my hand in the air, leaving Dottie standing there with a sassy look on her face. Bobby Ray was whistling in the shower when I got back to the camper. It brought back so many memories. You always knew where Bobby was or how far away he was because he always whistled a tune. His happy-go-lucky attitude was the one thing that made me love being around him so much. It made me happy to see he'd not changed all that much. No matter what my gut told me, I was going to be nice and kind to Bobby. He deserved that. Before he finished with his lengthy shower, I unlocked the glove box in my RV and got into my little stash of cash. It was the only thing that Paul had done right by me before the FBI seized everything and hauled him off to jail. He'd left me $100,000 in a secret sock drawer in our Manhattan apartment. I'd used some here and there, mainly to pay Dottie back what Paul had taken from her, so there wasn't a lot left. But I couldn't forget what Dottie had suggested about paying Bobby back. In business, there were never handouts. For Bobby to walk halfway across the state to find me gave me some suspicion. It was best just to head it off at the pass. I hurried up and counted out $3,000 after I heard the water turn off. "Bobby?" I knocked on the door of the bathroom. "I've got some extra clothes for you on the floor outside of the door." I put them down on the ground and walked back to the kitchen area of the camper, which was about 5 steps away, busying myself with the tea. In no time, Bobby was standing next to me, smelling much better. "I'll take your clothes to the laundromat when I go to town later. I also need to go to the Tough Nickel thrift shop. I can pick you up a couple of outfits while I'm there." I handed him a glass of fresh sweet tea. Then I tugged the cash out of my back pocket. "I'm so glad you are here. Now I don't have to hunt you down to repay you." His eyes rounded as he fixed them on the wad of cash. "It's all $3,000 I owe you." I handed it to him.
"With interest?"
he asked. When I looked at him, he smiled.
"Just kidding."
He took a drink and put the cash in the front pocket of Paul's khakis.
"Mae, I'm not here to collect this money."
He wasn't fooling me because he wasn't digging it back out of his pocket.
"I gave that money to you, but I can't say it's not coming a time when I'm down on my luck."
This surprised me because Bobby was such a good mechanic. He always held down some sort of mechanic job and a side gig at the local fast food chain when we were kids.
All these fancy cars and technology changing like it's done has really put a learning curve in what I know.
"I've never thought about mechanics and the new technology," I said.
"I'm not used to these fancy clothes."
He wiped his hands down his chest. He was avoiding eye contact with me. Knowing Bobby Ray like I did, he was embarrassed at where his life had led him. "You can have them." I patted his back.
"This sure is a fancy camper."
He looked around.
"I don't think I've ever seen walls like this."
"Let me show you what it did look like." I took my phone off the charger and clicked onto the photos. I swiped the screen until I found them. As you can see, it wasn't that great, but I've learned a lot since living here. I've got some great friends that can decorate on a budget. These walls are old wood pallets that I've turned into that popular shiplap. I'd used every bit of space possible. I'd taken down all the walls and made it an open concept plan with the kitchen and family room in one big room. We'd put up shiplap walls painted white. I'd gotten a cute cafe table with 2 chairs from the Tough Nickel, as well as a small leather couch. It was perfect for me. The floors were redone with a prefabricated gray wood. The kitchen cabinets and all the storage cabinets were white. I'd transformed the little camper into a country farmhouse. I'd strung twinkle lights everywhere I could. The bathroom was redone with a tile shower and upgraded toilet. Then I had my bedroom in the back. I'd opted to buy a new mattress with some wood pallets painted pink and nailed together as a headboard. I'd gotten a dresser with 4 drawers from the Tough Nickel that went perfect with my distressed look. The twinkle lights added a bit of romance, along with the fuzzy rugs and milk glass vases full of fresh flowers or wildflowers that grew here in the Daniel Boone National Park.
"By the look of it, life's agreeing with you."
He sat down in one of the chairs at the table. "You know, it's hard to even remember how a few months ago I was actively trying to find a buyer so I could go back to being a flight attendant." I sat down across from him. Now, I couldn't imagine not living here.
"Even after they found your husband in that lake?"
he asked. "Ex." I took a drink of my tea. Without bragging, I'd really outdone myself on this tea. I was getting better and better at making it taste so good. "Nope, I took the negative and turned that around." "Enough about me. Tell me about you. Where are you headed?"
"Why, I'm here."
He patted the kitchen table. "Here? As in normal?" I tried to dance around the big elephant in the room.
"Yep, I figured you'd need someone looking after you like I used to do. That's when I decided to head here."
He patted the table. "Oh, no." I waved off his ridiculous notion. "You don't need to do that. I'm just fine. But I sure have enjoyed our little visit and glad I got to pay you back. Where are you staying?"
"You don't have any open campers?"
he asked. He'd obviously done more than just look me up. He looked up the entire Happy Trails website.
I seen where you have some campers for rent."
As much as I wanted to say they were all taken and get him out of my life because he was here for something, I couldn't let him just loiter around normal. Actually, they are little bungalows, but of course you can stay in one. I have to check with Dottie to see which one is open. There was a smile on my face, but my stomach churned. For a brief second, I felt like I was going to throw up. But why? 7. Oh, no. No, no! I jumped up when I realized that I'd fallen asleep before I'd set the alarm on my phone to go get Ty. According to the bright sun filtering into the camper, it was the next morning. The Bluegrass Airport was 2 hours away, which meant I should have left about 30 minutes ago to make it there on time, and I'd yet to trade bets back for my car. It looked like I was going to have to drive the minivan to pick up Ty. I took a quick shower and had to forget doing my hair and makeup. It wasn't how I pictured myself when Ty would see me for the first time on this visit. A little lip gloss and some wet hair that had turned to frizz in this heat was going to have to do. Dottie waved her hand with a big cig stuck in between her fingers when I passed by her camper. I wanted so bad to stop and ask about Nikki, but there was no time for gossip. Ty was standing by the curb outside the sliding doors at the arrival gate when I pulled up. I honked and waved, only to be greeted by what I'd call big shock and awe on his face. Those blue eyes popped against his tanned face. The shaggy blonde hair curled and framed his face. It was a little longer than he'd worn it in the spring, but still looked tidy and handsome. I threw the van into park and jumped out. "Welcome home." I clasped my hands in front of me to keep them from finding a mind of their own and flinging them around his neck. But my mind had another plan. As if in slow motion, I watched as my arms floated up in the air with each step my feet were taking closer to him, wrapping them around his neck.
"Mae, I'm a little shocked to see you here to pick me up."
He used both hands to pat my back. I might have nuzzled him a little when I audibly inhaled to take in that smell, the same smell that permeated the inside of his camper. He took a step back. "I'm sorry I'm late." I tucked a stray strand of my curly mess behind my ear. "I've been helping Bets clean, and I lost track of time this morning." I lied. I didn't want him to think I'd overslept and was scatterbrained. "Which reminds me, do you mind if we stop by Tammy Jo Bentley's to pick up a check on our way into Normal?"
"Not at all."
He grabbed the big suitcase next to his feet.
"I'm glad you brought Bets's van, because all of these are mine."
He turned and looked at the trunk and more luggage behind him. "Wow, I didn't realize your dad was that bad." I'd felt bad for not making a call to check on Ron this morning on my way here. He must have gotten worse if Ty'd brought all this home for a visit.
"He's not. They moved him to the rehab center this morning. He's only going to be there a couple of days so they can keep an eye on the burn and skin graft to make sure it doesn't get infected."
He picked up the pieces and put them in the back of the van, pushing the cleaning supplies closer to the front.
"They're starting him on physical therapy to move his fingers and wrists, but there are things he can do at home once he learns them."
"That's great news." I tried not to seem so eager, but I felt like a schoolgirl. Kinda like Nikki. Inwardly, I groaned. Nikki. Ugh. "Are you staying a while or just bringing some things back?"
"Actually, I'm moving back."
He didn't seem to be as upbeat as my heart. "Really?" My voice was a little shaky. "Why? I thought you loved living there." We got into the van. There was a slew of emotions rumbling up inside of me, ones that I didn't recognize, and they almost scared me. Yes, he was super attractive, and if you asked any woman in Normal, they'd agree. But there was something about him actually living in Normal that kind of had me worried. I think in the back of my head, I knew I could look at him and fantasize, since I knew he was always going back to San Francisco. This time, he wasn't going back.
"I do. But after I was here last spring helping Dad raise the boys, I realized I'd missed out a lot on them growing up. They need as many adults in their lives as they can get, and I felt like I was ripping the family apart all over again." Sean is almost an adult, but Timmy needs me."
He put his elbow on the windowsill, covering his mouth with his hand and staring out the window.
"Enough about that. I'm here and staying, just like you, Mae West."
I wondered if you were going to bring that up. I gripped the wheel and steered the van onto the interstate that put us on the curvy road back to Daniel Boone National Park. I was going to explain what you'd overheard between me and Stanley the last time you were here, but when I went to your camper the next day, you were gone.
"I didn't want to be there when you broke the news to all those people who really believed in you."
He looked over at me.
"I asked my dad about you to see if he'd tell me you left, but he said that the Happy Trails was thriving and you were doing a bang-up job with the place, even boosting the economy."
He reached into the backpack he'd thrown on the floorboard when he got in.
"I got my copy of National Parks magazine and about died when I saw your article."
Oh gosh, I really underestimated how many people were going to see that. Immediately, I thought of Bobby Ray.
"It goes out to all the national parks. It's a big deal."
His words were kind, and I could feel the tension thawing between us.
"I guess I jumped the gun and didn't let you explain. I'm sorry for that."
His voice trailed off. "No problem. I figured you'd be back one day to visit, not move." There was a silence between us the rest of the way, and I couldn't help but think about what he was thinking. It was one of those penny-for-your-thought moments. Then I imagined he'd say something about how he'd thought about that last time he'd seen me and how things might have turned out differently. But in reality, he was probably worried about his dad. Evidently, he wasn't thinking anything. The sound of a light snore drifted my way. A couple of hours later, Ty still asleep, I pulled up to Tammy Joe's house. I quietly clicked the van door closed because I didn't want to wake him. The airplane ride from California to Kentucky was a long one, and I was sure he didn't sleep much on the plane with the concern of his father and brothers on his mind, not to mention the change in his lifestyle. The door to the house was cracked open. "Hello?" I called, but was only greeted by the echo of my voice. "Tammy Joe? It's Mae West. I'm here to pick up the cleaning check for Betts Haker," I yelled a little louder. "Out here," Tammy Joe finally called back. "Outside on the balcony." I walked through the house and out the door from the family room I'd cleaned. She was standing on the porch with Fifi in her arms. Again, the pooch wiggled and jiggled until Tammy Joe finally let her down. "I didn't open your front door when I yelled for you. I wanted her to know that I didn't just let myself in. The door was cracked." The little poodle scurried over to me, jumping up and down for me to pick her up. I did, just in case Tammy Joe decided to give me a tip, if only on the merits of her dog liking me. Tammy Joe dramatically swept across the balcony, the sheer pink housecoat with fuzzy fur lining floating behind her. She was holding a napkin on her arm. There were 2 glasses of wine and a cheese plate on the table. It must have been another woman there, because there was lipstick on both. Clearly, the bright red lipstick matched the lipstick on Tammy Joe's mouth. But who wore the orange? That's a bold lipstick, something that would stick out. "Did I interrupt you?" I gazed over at the table. "No, it's just me." She headed to the door, continuing to blot the napkin on her arm. "Fifi just had her hair clipped, and her nails are so sharp. She scratched me, by accident, of course, when I picked her up." "Do you want me to look at it?" I asked. No, I'll be fine. Follow me to Harrison's office. That's where I keep the checks." She walked through the open deck doors. Some stray feathers from her housecoat floated behind her. "Harrison?" I didn't know who that was. "My deceased husband." She stopped in her tracks on the way down the hallway. "I guess that's something me and you have in common." She put her hand on the doorknob of the closed door. "I guess you checked up on me." I pinched a fake smile, thinking only of a tip. "Hank told me who you were after you pushed your little cleaning cart around the house yesterday." She turned the knob. I think it's admirable how you're working your way to pay off your husband's mistakes or misdeeds." "X," I said through an exhausted sigh. She opened the door and took a couple of steps in before she flipped on the light and let out a blood-curdling scream before fainting. Camille Braun was sitting behind Harrison's desk in his big leather chair, with a knife stuck in her chest and her eyes open. 8. "Tammy!" I kneeled down, figuring I'd save the one who still had a heartbeat, because by the looks of things, the nanny did not. I put a hand on each of Tammy's shoulders and shook her, trying to get her to come to. There was no waking up this gal. I pulled my phone out of my back pocket and scrolled through the contacts until I got to Detective Hank Sharp. I sucked in a deep breath before hitting the green call button. "What in the world could Mae West want with me?" was how Hank answered the phone. "Hank, there's been a murder." I resisted the urge to say something very smart-alecky and decided it was best just to blurt out what happened. "I'm at Tammy Jo Bentley's picking up my check." "Mae?" Ty Randall called out through the house. "Are you okay? I heard a scream." "Back here, Ty," I yelled back out towards the hall. "Ty, what? Mae?" Hank's voice echoed out of the phone. "Hank, just come to Tammy Jo Bentley's house. There's been a murder." I clicked off the phone and hoped he'd just come already. I took another look at Tammy Jo before I stood up, guessing she'd be okay while I got Ty. "Mae, what's wrong?" Ty came down the hall. My chest heaved up and down. I could feel the tears starting. I curled my lips together. He hurried down the hall and stopped, looking down at me. "Mae, what's wrong?" His eyes darted around my face. "The dog nanny." I pointed into the room. I looked down and found the courage to look back up at him. "She's been murdered." My voice trailed off. He darted past me and into the room. When I turned to go back into the room, I could hear sirens, and Ty was bent over Tammy Jo. "Tammy?" He looked back at me. "She passed out." I blinked a few times, and reality started to sink in. He stood up and twisted around. He pointed to the bar. "Grab a water and a towel," he instructed me. "What's going on here?" Norman Peddleman stood at the door of the office. He looked around the room, and when he saw Camille in the chair, he turned white. Then his eyes floated down to Tammy Jo. "Tammy!" he gasped, dropping the briefcase from his grip, and rushed to Ty. "Mae, water," Ty told me again. "Okay." I felt like a robot, and like I was having some out-of-body experience. I grabbed the water and unscrewed the top, dousing the towel on my way over to Ty. Ty took the towel and gently patted Tammy's head and face with it. Norman held her hand in his and stroked it. The sound of footsteps thundered into the house. "Police, come out with your hands up." Hank's voice was deep and boisterous. Ty and I looked at each other. He shrugged, and we walked out the door with our hands up. The police officers with Hank ran over to us with their guns drawn and pointing directly at our chests. One took Ty by the arm, and one jerked me by the arm. The third officer ran into the office where Tammy and Camille's body were. "What happened?" Hank looked at me, ignoring Ty. Detective Elmo Burke, Hank's partner, entered the crime scene. He had the same black suit, round glasses, and shiny bald spot on the top of his head that I remembered from the first time I'd met him. "Listen, man, Ty started to talk. "I'm not talking to you, Randall." Hank put his hand up. "Mae, you called me. What happened?" "Sir, there's 2 bodies." The officer stuck his head out of the door of the office. "And we can't get the other man to let go of the lady on the ground." "Tammy Jo Bentley isn't dead. She passed out." Somehow I was able to get the words out. "Norman is her—" "I know who Norman is. You stay here," he instructed me. He looked at the officer who still had me by the arms. "You come with me." "What about me?" Ty questioned, but Hank ignored him. "Jerk," Ty muttered when he didn't get a response. The sound of car doors shutting and feet pounding up the front steps of the house caused me to look back down the hall. Queenie and Dottie ran in. They both had on spandex, tank tops, headbands, and leggings. Queenie looked like a big sun in yellow, and Dottie was wearing light blue. "What's going on?" Dottie saw Ty and then glanced down the hall at me. "Mae!" She rushed towards me. "Ma'am, you need to stay right there. This is a crime scene." The officer who had Ty by the arm had let go and made a barrier between Ty and Dottie. Norman Peddleman had been let out of the room and seated on the hall floor with his back against the wall. The officer was saying something to him, and Norman just kept nodding with a blank look on his face. "How did you know I was here?" I asked her. "Police scanner. Queenie and I were getting ready to go to her jazzercise dance mix class, and she was picking me up when I heard it come over the scanner." That would explain their outfits. "Mae." Hank Sharp called my name and looked out the door of the office. His brows rose an inch when he saw Dottie and Queenie. "Can I talk to you in here?" "Sure." I nodded real fast and went back into the room, keeping my eyes off of that chair. The officer had Tammy sitting up. Next to her was a small vial that looked to be smelling salts. "Can you tell me what happened here?" he asked. He'd already put on white gloves on his hands and a pair of booties on his shoes. So had the other officer. My voice quivered. My body started to shake a little. "Are you okay?" Hank snapped the gloves off his hands. He ran his warm hand down my arm and turned me towards him, using his finger to lift my chin to meet his eyes. "Look at me." His words were soft, almost comforting. "Are you okay?" he asked with sincerity. I licked my lips and sucked in a deep breath. Looking only at him helped me find my voice. "I cleaned here yesterday for Bets Hager. I forgot to get the check for Bets and told her that I'd stop by for the check after I picked Ty up from the airport." I looked over at Tammy Jo when I heard her sobbing. The officer was doing his best to try to talk to her, but she was getting louder and louder as the seconds ticked past. "Mae, what can you tell me about what happened here?" he asked. "She told me to follow her to the office. Harrison's office." I tried to recall every step. "Tammy told you or the nanny?" he asked. "I'm sorry," I apologized. "Tammy asked me to come to the office because that's where the checkbook was. When we opened the door, she flipped on the light, and that's when we saw Camille. Tammy Jo fainted, and I called you." "Ty?" he asked. "He came running into the house when he heard Tammy scream." Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the county coroner walking in and heading straight to the body. "Did you touch anything?" Hank asked, still in a soft voice, as if he were talking to a child. "No. Yes. No." I shook my head and looked over at the coroner as she started to look over the nanny's body. "Which is it?" he asked, and touched my arm again, making me look at him. "Just keep looking at me." "Ty came in, and he saw that Tammy Jo had fainted, or I told him that or something. It was a little fuzzy to me. He told me to grab a water bottle and towel from the bar so we could put it on Tammy." "That's all you touched?" he asked with an expression of relief on his face. "That's all," I nodded. "You did good calling me." He offered a smile. "I want you to go on home, and I'll either stop by later or have you come down to the station to give a recorded statement." "Why would someone kill her?" I asked. "That's a good question. I don't know yet. You weren't the first person to call about the murder. Someone called it in anonymously, saying that a loud scream had come from Tammy Jo's house. It was 10 minutes before you called, and I was already on my way." He pulled his shoulders back when the officer came over and whispered something about the nanny not being dead for long. "You can join the others outside and send in Ty." "Okay." I looked back at the coroner, and she was staring back at me. Ty had joined Dottie and Queenie in the foyer of the house. The officer had taken yellow crime scene tape and strung it across the beginning of the hall. I ducked down under it and walked over to them. "Are you okay?" Ty asked. "I'm fine. Hank wants to talk to you now." I pinched a smile that faltered a little at the corners. Once again, I got Ty tangled up in a mess. This wasn't the first time. Last time he was in town, I practically accused him of killing my ex. Queenie's lips were pressed together. He's all man. She watched Ty walk down the hall. His dad's not bad either, Dottie replied. You two, stop it. Someone is dead, I whispered and tugged on them to follow me outside. What happened? Dottie asked and patted her hands to her chest, taking out a cigarette. What is that? Queenie snarled. You're supposed to be quittin', and we were going to jazzercise. Queenie's voice got louder. Were you going to take a puff between jazz hands? Shush your mouth. I'm nervous. She found a lighter in there, too. I wasn't going to argue with either of them. My head was too busy trying to wrap around what had happened in the last hour or so that we'd been there. It could have been longer, but I'd lost track of time. Go on, Mae, Dottie encouraged me. What happened? Tammy Jo and I found the dog nanny with a knife in her chest. That's it. She's clearly dead, but I did hear the officer tell Hank that she'd not been dead long. I tried to recall if I'd seen something when I'd driven up, but there wasn't anything I could remember that was out of the ordinary. This is awful. Are you sure it was murder? Queenie asked. Nah, Dottie said with a hint of sarcasm. The nanny went into the office and shoved a knife into her own chest. Who would do this to her? Queenie and Dottie asked all sorts of unanswerable questions as they bantered back and forth until they'd decided they'd seen enough. I guess this will be the talk of the town, Queenie nudged Dottie. Now that I missed teaching my class, do you want to go back to the laundry club for a cup of coffee? I'm guessing we should, in case someone comes in to ask us about this. Dottie gave a slight gesture to Tammy Jo's house. It wasn't too long after they left that Ty came back out. What did Hank say? I asked a flustered Ty. He's just a jerk. He wanted to know why I was in town and how long I was staying. Nothing that had to do with this. He walked towards the minivan. Are you coming? Yeah, I guess we can go. I reached into my pocket for the keys. Do you want me to drive? You seem a little unsteady still. He noticed I was trying to keep my hands from shaking. Without even saying a word, I handed him the keys. He opened the passenger door for me and took my elbow to help me into the van. He shut the door, and Hank Sharp was staring at me from the front door. As if dealing with seeing a dead body wasn't enough, the chill between Ty and Hank was impossible to ignore. Ty started the van and put it into gear, stepping on the gas pedal. We didn't say a word. On the way down the driveway, I noticed the gardener was mowing the pasture. Slow down! Ty jerked the wheel as a car barreled down the driveway, almost hitting us. For just a second, I saw the person driving the car. It was Ava Cox. What on earth is she doing here? I had a death grip on the door handle while Ty fought to keep the van on the driveway. She's going to kill someone. He steadied the wheel, then stopped the van, looking in the rearview mirror. Who is that? That was Ava Cox. I turned completely around in my seat to look out the back windows. Related to Grady and Junior? Ty remembered that my now-deceased ex-husband Paul's killer was Grady Cox, Jr., the son of Ava and Grady Cox, victims of Paul's Ponzi scheme. The one and only wife and mother. My voice trailed off as I slowly turned around. I wonder what she's doing, going to see Tammy Jo Bentley. He asked a very good question that had my curiosity set on high alert. I don't know, but I want to. I let out a deep sigh of relief as I felt calmness sweep over me once Ty had the van heading straight to town and away from the Bentleys. 9. Ty and I didn't have much to say after we left Tammy Jo's. I was too busy wondering who in the world would kill Camille.
Poor Tammy Jo. I finally spoke after Ty had pulled into the parking lot of the hospital where his dad should have been getting discharged from about now. I can't believe it. Was anyone else in the house when you got there? He turned off the ignition and put the keys on the middle console. No, she said it was just her. I snapped my fingers. There were 2 glasses of wine and a cheese plate on the deck where she was standing. It was a little tidbit I'd forgotten to tell Hank Sharp. And what does that prove? Ty asked. Maybe whoever she was eating with went into the house and killed the nanny. It didn't sound that far-fetched. Ty laughed. What? I asked. You asked me if anyone else was there. Obviously, there was. I shrugged. I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing because there's so much excitement in your voice when you've pulled this theory out of the air. It's like you're passionate about this, that's all. He unlocked the doors and put his hand on the handle. Thanks for picking me up. Slowly, his head turned towards me. I'm also sorry that I didn't get the opportunity to say goodbye before I left. I'd like to make it up to you and take you to supper sometime, and not a campground supper. You mean like a real restaurant or the normal diner? I asked, knowing that more than likely he was going back to work there, especially now that his dad has been hurt. That's exactly what I mean. I'd like to make it up to you, he said in a soft tone. Are you taking me on a date? I teased and narrowed my eyes. Or are you trying to get out of paying for any extras at the campground? Yep, that's it. You got me. He winked and got out of the car, leaving me hanging on his every word. I tried to stop the huge smile on my face and clumsily climbed over the console of the van, nearly falling face forward into the dash. When I finally got situated in the driver's seat, I looked out of the windshield. Ty had watched me maneuver to the driver's seat and was standing in front of the hospital, looking at me and shaking his head. On the way back to the campground, I tried like heck to remember things about Tammy Jo's house and what had happened, but all my thoughts were about Ty. I even looked at my phone a few times to see if he'd already texted me. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was bright blue, with the sun beaming down on the town. The campground had a slight breeze due to all the big trees that help shield. Though it was smoldering hot, it would be gorgeous on the hiking trails of Daniel Boone National Park. The campground was starting to look like a desert, literally. Dottie had gone overboard with the theme. She had blow-up cactuses tied down around the lake. She turned the tiki bar into a desert bar by scattering cowboy boots and a few sombreros around. These parties had become very popular, and it was nice that the campers had the opportunity to get to know each other. I'd learned that part of the camping community was learning where everyone was from. A few of the campers had made plans to travel to each other's states and meet up at different parks around the country. I especially loved hearing about favorite national parks and locations. It was a fun atmosphere, and I was honored to be a part of it. I pulled the van around the lake and saw Henry and Bobby Ray talking to a few guests. Howdy, Henry greeted me. Hey, I motioned for him to come to the open window. Do you mind jumping in and giving me a hand with Ty's bags? Bags? Henry poked his head into the van. What's up with all that? Before I dropped him off at the hospital, he said he was moving back and brought some stuff with him. I left out the part about the murder and the fact Ty'd asked me out. I'll be back, Henry told the group he was talking to and got in. So, did y'all reconnect that little spark between you? Spark? I laughed. I don't think so. There was no denying the spark you two had going the night before he left. Henry knew everything about this campground and everyone in it. But if you don't want to tell me, that's fine. I've got eyes. When we got to Ty's camper, I parked the car and got out without saying a word, letting Henry rely on his eyes. I used the key I had and unlocked the camper while Henry grabbed a couple of the bags. Don't mess with those, Henry said when I went back to the van to grab a bag.
I'm good. I can help. It sounded like I really wanted to help, but I really just wanted to touch Ty's suitcase.
Here.
Henry took the bag from me just as my phone rang in my back pocket.
You go and get done what you need to get done. I've got this.
Okay, fine. I gave in, knowing that Henry was too much of a gentleman to let me even take one step carrying something. Ava Cox, I whispered, and read the name scrolling across my phone. Henry, you have this? I hit the answer button when he nodded and gestured for me to go on. Hello? I got into the van and put it in gear, turning the wheel back towards my camper. Mae, this is Ava Cox. I know I'm the last person you thought you'd ever hear from, but I need to talk to you right now. She left no room for a protest. I'm on my way over to Happy Trails, and I'd like a cup of coffee. The detective said you had a nice coffee maker. Ava? I pulled the phone from my ear when I noticed it went silent. She hung up on me, I said, and pulled onto the concrete pad next to my camper. Before I got out of the car, I sent Bets Hager a text telling her I'd yet been able to go to the nursing home to clean the 2 apartments there, but I'd do them this afternoon, with a follow-up text to let her know that we'd meet up and exchange cars after that. Now that Ty was back, Bets was free from babysitting his brothers and should be able to resume her cleaning schedule. After I filled the coffee pot's carafe with water and scooped coffee into the basket, I quickly pulled my unruly hair into a ponytail and changed my clothes into a pair of shorts and tank top. It was way too hot to try to look cute, especially when I was just going to clean up after a couple little old ladies. I did have my eye on a cute jumper to pull on after I finished at the nursing home, in case I had a visitor, like Ty. The coffee pot beeped to tell me that the brewing cycle was complete, while I splashed water on my face. My eyes were closed as the cold water hit my face. They jerked open when the image of Camille's eyes staring blankly back at me with the knife in her chest popped into my head. I stood in front of the mirror, staring back at myself with the towel over my mouth. There was a knock at the door, and I swiped the towel across my face. Come in. I stuck my head out the bathroom door and hollered. It's me, Ava, she called, and I heard the door click closed. Quickly, I put 1 pump of sunscreen in my hands and applied it to my face before I went out to greet her. I have to say I was shocked to see you at Tammy Jo Bentley's house, and now you're here. I took down 2 mugs from the hooks that were hanging down from the cabinet next to the sink. It was all about space consumption when you lived in a trailer. When I was going through the renovation, I knew I wanted to have a little cozy cottage feel. This is charming. Ava looked around. She held up 2 fingers. 2 teaspoons of sugar. Her petite frame looked smaller since the last time I'd seen her. Her long black curly hair was pulled back at the nape of her neck. She still had perfect $1 million olive skin. I got the creamer out of the small refrigerator and the sugar packets out of the cabinet, giving them to her so she could doctor up her own coffee. I took mine black, and it smelled so good. I was looking out the window over the kitchen sink when I heard a car engine. Is your car running? I asked. Yes, I don't plan on being here long. She took the coffee mug. Let's just get down to it. There's no sense in making small talk when there's business to be had. Ava stirred the coffee and set the spoon on the table. She had a briefcase with her. She placed it on the table and rummaged through the contents. I sat in the chair across from her. Finally, she took out a page from a legal-size notepad, the kind that you have to flip at the top to get to the next page. I'm Tammy Jo Bentley's lawyer. She looked up at me with high brows. She has been taken into custody for the murder of Camille. Really? I questioned. Yes. I don't think she did it, and I need you as a witness. She rolled her shoulders back. Her jaw tensed. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's easy looking at you, since your husband is the reason my son is in jail and my husband is dead. Ex, I reminded her, but bit my tongue about how her husband and my ex had been best friends for years. Her husband did give my ex the millions of dollars Ava and Grady had built up from their horse business,
But my ex didn't make her son, Grady Jr., kill her husband, or my ex. That was all on him. Still, I do have to commend you for making an effort to fix his mess by paying people back and bringing the campground back to life, which helps the economy. She tapped her pen on the pad of paper. Anyways, I want to know a good time for us to meet so we can discuss today and previous days you've been with my client. I can pretty much make up my own schedule, but I'm not sure I have a lot to add. I don't really know Tammy Jo. I just cleaned for her the one time for a friend. I took a drink of the coffee. Really? She put the pen down and gave me a strange look. She threw the pad and pen back into her briefcase. She stood up. Can you come with me? Sure. I stood up and followed her out to her car. She opened the front door, sticking her briefcase on her seat, and then opening the back door. She pulled out Fifi. Here. She stuck the dog in my chest, and out of reflex, I took her. For someone who is just an acquaintance, Tammy Jo seemed pretty confident that you could watch after her prize-winning dog. Me? I adjusted Fifi so her nails wouldn't tear me up like they'd done Tammy Jo's arm. I don't think so. Firmly, I held the dog out for Ava to take. She's not got anyone else. She shrugged and slammed the back door. Nope. She's got the gardener. And what about that insurance guy, Norman? I asked. Those are all people who work for her. She opened the driver's side door, not listening to my protest. Not trusted individuals. No. I can't take care of a dog, especially a dog that looks like this. I turned Fifi to me to look at her, and her long tongue slapped against my cheek. You can keep her. Tammy Jo is your client, and you must be a trusted individual in her life. Don't be ridiculous. Ava wasn't going to take the dog. I don't have a dog bed, food, or anything else. She's an award-winning dog, from what I hear. I rolled my eyes. That sort of class is not found here at Happy Trails. I don't have a fancy watch to train her, nor do I have the time to put her down for her daily naps, much less play with her. I'm sure she'll be fine with a few days off of her vigorous schedule. Ava wasn't leaving any room for me to wiggle out of this. I almost forgot. Ava got back out of the car and opened the trunk. She took out a pink, bedazzled bag with Fifi's name embroidered on the front in white thread. Everything you need. Now, I've got to get going. I've got to go to the police station to talk to my client. What was going on here? I was at a loss for words. I stood there stunned and unable to say anything, not even noticing Ty and his brothers driving past Ava's car in Ron Randall's car. Fifi continued to lick my face. I continued to watch Ava's taillights until she turned out of the campground. Did you get a dog? Ty's younger brother, Timmy, ran up to me and took Fifi right out of my arms. Can I play with her? I still couldn't bring myself to say anything. What was Tammy Jo thinking? Why me? I had to go see her, but I had to get those apartments at the nursing home cleaned too. I'm babysitting. The strange words came out of my mouth as Ty walked up to me. Wasn't that the car that practically killed us today? Ty asked, watching Timmy play with Fifi. Sean kept his distance. Fifi yipped and barked, jumping around and biting at the hem of Timmy's shorts. Yes, she's a lawyer, and Tammy Jo has been taken into custody for the murder of Camille Braun. I thought you said you didn't know Tammy Jo until yesterday, Ty said. I didn't. For some reason, she wants me to keep her dog until she gets out of jail. I picked up the bag. Ava wouldn't let me decline. She just hopped in her car and took off, just like that. Nice bag, Ty laughed. Pink might be your color. Hush. I nudged him with my elbow. I need a favor. I gnawed on the edge of my lip, like he didn't already have enough on his plate. I'm worried about what it might be. He gave me the side eye. I told Bets I'd clean a few apartments at the nursing home, too. I've still got to go do those, and I know she doesn't have your brothers, but I'm sure she's so tired from keeping them busy. I pointed to the dog.
I still want to clean for her, but I can't take Fifi with me.
His jaw dropped and he wagged a finger at me. No way.
Look, your brother loves her, and it'll only be like an hour. It's a nursing home apartment. I reminded him how small those were. An hour tops. He looked at his brother and then back at me a couple of times. I had my lips turned down in a frown, with my hands together, batting my eyelashes.
Fine. More than an hour, and we bring her there.
He finally gave in. Thank you. I threw my arms around his neck.
I could get used to this,
he whispered, sending goosebumps down my spine. 10. Many times I have let my mind wonder what was going to happen to me when I got older. There were so many stories about how expensive nursing homes were. When I married Paul, I thought my golden years would be taken care of. Walking into the senior living area of the nursing home made me sad. There was a real fear that I wasn't going to have anyone take care of me or see to my needs. Tilly Blake and Olga Watson didn't seem to mind about anyone but the two of them.
I've seen you here a time or two.
Tilly Blake had dyed black hair down to her shoulders. There was a small scar on her right eyebrow, and her two front teeth were crooked. She was only 5 feet in height, but had a mighty boisterous voice.
I've seen her at church.
Olga Watson's black hair was cut to below her earlobes. She didn't have on makeup like Tilly. By her appearance, Olga didn't get ready in front of a mirror. She was somewhat disheveled compared to Tilly. She stood about 5'7" and had a little more girth than Tilly. They bantered back and forth at which one saw me first, before they finally let me in the door of Tilly's apartment.
You know that we don't really have beds cleaned too much, right?
Tilly asked. I understand that you love to watch Wheel of Fortune. I looked at the two best friends, thinking it must be really nice to have good friends at their age.
We do love Vanna. She's a snappy dresser.
Olga nodded to Tilly for confirmation, and Tilly ho-hummed.
Get in here before the first spin.
Tilly and Olga walked ahead of me. I think it's great the two of you are best friends. I did get all the trash in the kitchen, like Bets had said to do, while they told me how they'd become friends.
We both protested coming here.
Tilly and Olga talked over each other.
We got here the same day, both of us spittin' vinegar.
While they talked, I cleaned the kitchen sink, wiped down the counters, and quickly mopped the small kitchen floor, when I noticed there were some spills that had not been fully cleaned up.
After we found each other, we realized we liked the same things. Gossip being one of them.
Olga was sitting on the couch, and Tilly was sitting in a big, puffy recliner. Everyone likes a good tale, I said on my way to the bathroom.
Have you heard about anything new?
I heard one of them ask me while I emptied the trash can in the bathroom and sprayed cleaner in the toilet. Nope, not a thing, I said, loud enough for them to hear me, and used the toilet brush to clean the inside of the bowl. There was some silence as I busied myself cleaning the sink, counter, and tub. The tick of the wheel spinning on the TV show reminded me of the pocket watch. I almost told them about the gossip about the watch being worth $2 million, but decided that I didn't want to get into how I knew about it.
Did you see Ron Randall is back in rehab?
Olga said to Tilly.
Why this time?
Tilly asked Olga.
I don't know.
Olga gave a slight shrug. That is something I do know, I said, after I'd combined all the trash into one bag and gathered all the cleaning supplies back into the bucket.
Sit on down and give us the scoop.
Olga patted the seat next to her. For the next half hour, I told them about Ron and how I ran the campground, knowing that before I left there, I'd made 2 new friends that I'd found out were in their 80s. I couldn't help but smile the whole way home, thinking that friends come in all ages. I grabbed a quick shower before I went to Ty's to get Fifi. He was busy trying to get Timmy calmed down. Sean was playing video games. Ty was busy with his family, so I left with Fifi. Daydreaming about Ty Randall being a few campers away was better than any sleeping medication, when I couldn't get images of Camille Braun's creepy, wide-eyed face out of my head. I'd like to say the sun shining through the window or chirping birds woke me up from a nice dream about Ty, but it was a white fluff ball yipping and scratching on the metal camper door, which sounded like nails on a chalkboard. "Fifi, go to bed." I dragged the pillow back over my head after I looked over at my digital clock. The blue LED bulbs read 5 a.m. My muscles were aching from all the bending down and cleaning I'd been doing. I could have slept a few more hours, but Fifi continued to yip and scratch on the metal door, sending my nerves on high alert. Since my bedroom was located in the back of the camper, I'd gotten the idea to let her act up, and I'd close the bedroom door. But when she started whining, I knew the poor thing meant business. "All right." I threw the covers back and grabbed a Happy Trails Campground sweatshirt on my way to the front of the camper. Dottie had insisted we sell tchotchkes with the Happy Trails logo on them in the office. I can say that I was glad she had insisted, because I'd been pleasantly surprised at how many people like to collect and purchase items from the campgrounds they visit across the U.S. I dug through Fifi's bag to get her leash. There was still a lack of trust between me and her. I wasn't sure she'd even listen to me. According to the directions in her bag, she knew a lot of commands, started her day around this awful morning hour, and ate her special diet food, which was in my refrigerator, after her morning walk. "Come on, Fifi." I clipped the pink leash onto her diamond-encrusted collar before picking her up. The door creaked when I opened it, and the 2 metal steps on the ground groaned under my bare feet. Fifi darted straight ahead when I put her on the ground. She stopped as soon as the leash went taut. The moon was still hanging high in the sky, with the stars bright and gathered around it. Lightning bugs fluttered about, dotting the darkness with little drops of blinking light. The lake looked so pretty, with their lights reflecting off the calm water. The humidity was thick, and with the stars out, I knew that it wasn't going to rain. This was a good thing, since Dottie had worked so hard on the summer sizzler party. The sudden realization Fifi was here due to a dead body, and Tammy Jo Bentley being in jail on a murder charge, made my heart heavy. Tammy Jo taking me into the office where Camille had been killed didn't make sense. If she had killed her, why would she take me to the office? And why would she faint? It wasn't a fake faint either. She was out cold. "Someone is in deep thought." Ty's voice broke through the chirping crickets and the bullfrogs. "Ty, what on earth are you doing out here?" I asked, knowing that I wouldn't be out here if it weren't for Fifi. I tugged on the leash a little more so Fifi would follow me. Ty's camper wasn't next to mine, but he was just a couple of lots down from me. "I can't sleep. The dog nanny is on my mind," he said. The closer he got, the darkness disappeared around him, exposing a shirtless and muscular Ty. "Aren't you burning up in that sweatshirt?" he asked. "Not me." About right now, I was liking the fact the sweatshirt was covering up the goosebumps trailing along my arms. "What about Camille?" I asked, curious to know if we were thinking the same thing. "While you were gone to clean at the nursing home last night, I watched my brothers playing with Fifi. I kept thinking about what Tammy Jo's possible reason for murdering someone who took such great care of Fifi could be. I mean, it doesn't make sense," he said, making a good point. Fifi continued to walk on the road that led around the campground, going towards Ty's camper and near the bungalows at the very back of Happy Trails. Ty and I let her lead the way, stopping when she stopped to smell or do her business. "That's not the only thing that doesn't make sense. Hank said he was on his way to Tammy Jo's when I called, because someone had called it in anonymously. Plus, why would she take me in the office if she did kill Camille?" I asked. "And she fainted." "Yeah, she wouldn't have fainted if she'd known, because it wouldn't have shocked her like that." Ty was right. "So what now?" I asked. "What do you mean?" He stopped in front of his camper. "Tammy Jo is accused of murder and in jail. Fifi doesn't want to live in a campground. I can't keep her." I shrugged. "Oh, no.
He wagged a finger in front of me. "You aren't going to stick your nose in this one. I'm certainly not." "I don't think it would hurt to look into things. You know, the front door was cracked when I went to her door. It was a minor detail that I'd forgotten and should probably tell Hank." My jaw dropped. "What? I don't like that look on your face." Ty's eyebrows furrowed. "It's telling me that you're thinking way too much about this." I completely forgot that when I walked into the house, I called out for Tammy Jo. She was on the back porch. There were 2 wine glasses. Both had lipstick on them. Was one Camille's? Did something go wrong and she really did kill Camille? I started to ramble about these conspiracy theories. I mean, she said I'd not interrupted anything. Then there was the gardener and Camille. Camille was upset after they had this hushed conversation while I was there cleaning, and Tammy Jo had scratches on her arm. "Whoa, whoa," Ty whispered and looked around. "What was all that?" "I need coffee." I gnawed on the edge of my lip. I had an itching to write all of this down before I forgot. "Come on, Fifi." She was resistant to the gentle tug from the leash. From the note, Fifi wasn't used to a leash hooked on her collar. She wore a harness around her chest that had a place for the leash to clip to. When I held up the harness, I couldn't tell which strap went where, so that's why I fashioned it to her collar. "Let me grab a shirt and check on the boys, and I'll be right down." Ty headed in the direction of his camper. "Let's go, Fifi." I continued to think about the gardener on my way back. I needed to recall everything they'd talked about. I turned on all the lights in the camper and got out Fifi's food. The smell was enough to gag me, and there was no way poor Fifi liked it. I set the container on the ground instead of dividing up the portions. Just as I imagined, Fifi walked up to it, smelled it, and turned her nose up. I don't blame you. I picked up the container and put the lid back on before tossing it into the trash. I'd worry about the repercussions of that later. I opened the refrigerator and took out some leftovers from my week. There were hot dogs, chicken, spaghetti, and some rice. I know you probably shouldn't eat hot dogs, but chicken and rice is what I think you might like. I talked to her like she understood me. Her white pom-pom ears perked up like she understood. Her hairless tail wagged. That's a yes to me. I grabbed a paper plate from one of the cabinets and put a little of the chicken and rice on it, just to see if she liked it. I set it on the ground in front of her to let her sniff it while I got the coffee ready. Before I could even get the 8 scoops of coffee can into the filter, Fifi had scarfed down all of the food. You must be really hungry. I pondered whether I should give her more. She must have known what I was thinking because she barked, turned in a circle, and wagged her tail. I'll give you more. I picked up the paper plate, hit the brew button on the coffee pot, and got more chicken and rice out of the refrigerator. Fifi was busy eating the rest of her breakfast when I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth and get a little more presentable for Ty. The sight of my frizzed hair in the mirror made me groan. Ty had seen exactly what I looked like when I woke up, and it wasn't pleasant. I'm not going to say I'm a pretty girl, but I could hold my own. I wasn't the thinnest, and I had curves in the right places. I was a little more on the regular size. By today's modeling standards, I'd be considered plus size. The size of my hair didn't make it better. I ran a brush through my hair and pulled it into a messy bun on the top of my head. That was one good thing about having long hair. My curls did have some weight to them, pulling them into long curls and not tight to the head like they would be if my hair was shoulder length. Still, the humidity did nothing to make it any better. The dark roast coffee smelled so good and filled the entire inside of the camper. There was a knock on the door, and I heard it open. "Mae?" Ty called, and then quickly greeted Fifi. "Hey, pretty girl." It was funny how his voice changed to a high-pitched squeak when he talked to her. I guess most people did that to dogs. "I'm changing," I called from the bedroom and grabbed a pair of shorts and t-shirt out of my drawer. "I'm going to make us a cup of coffee." Ty made himself at home. I smiled to myself. "Thanks." I walked down the hall to find him pouring the cups. I got a pad of paper and pen from one of the kitchen drawers. I put them on the table. "I think we need to write down everything we know." And why would we do that?
He looked at me over the top of his mug as he took a sip. Because of Fifi. She's not happy here, and the quicker Tammy Jo gets out, the better. I took the cup he made for me and sat down in one of the chairs at the table.
She looks pretty happy to me.
He smiled. Fifi had licked her plate clean and happily chewed on a pink poodle stuffed animal. When she looked up at me, our eyes met, and she wagged her tail, throwing the stuffed animal in the air. Show off, I laughed. She does look pretty happy.
Right. If she had a nanny and the strict schedule, she couldn't be a dog.
He picked up the list from her that I'd put on the table.
I mean, you have to make sure she gets these vitamins for premium breeding.
Does it say that on there? I admit I didn't really read through the note. You should have smelled the dog food they want me to give her. I didn't. She loved the chicken and rice.
Oh, Mae, if Tammy Jo does get out of jail, she might go back for killing you for not taking care of that dog.
He smiled. His eyes twinkled. I gulped. Then we need to get her out of jail before I do any more damage. I dragged the paper and pen towards me. Now, I think we can write down Tammy Jo's name and the gardener.
Why the gardener again?
He asked. Because when I was cleaning, I saw Camille watch the gardener. Even before that, I seen them huddled together outside. They jerked apart when they saw me coming. I talked and wrote their names down.
It's not a crime to talk to people you work with. It certainly doesn't scream murder.
He was playing the devil's advocate, and I appreciated that. I ignored him. What about my overhearing them arguing about how she couldn't be with him? That Fifi relied on her. Tammy Jo relied on her. Then she came back through the house with her head in her hands. I think she was crying. I wrote down motive under the gardener's name. He was rejected by Camille, and he killed her.
What about Tammy Jo?
He asked. I wonder if she and Camille had gotten into an argument. When I got there to clean, Tammy Jo had Fifi. Hank Sharp and Norman Peddleman were there. I wrote down Norman's name. When you and I went back to get the check for Betts Hager, there were 2 wine glasses. Both had lipstick on them. There was the bright red that Tammy Jo apparently wears all the time. The other was orange.
Orange?
Ty's nose curled. Yes, that's a bold color. I snapped my finger. Do you think it was someone with the Kentucky Kennel Association? I mean, my voice trailed off. The suspect list could be endless.
Mae, I think you are truly getting in over your head now. Your imagination is running wild.
He wasn't amused with my theories.
Maybe the mailman killed her.
Why? I asked with wide eyes.
Calm down. He picked up his coffee. I was kidding. Maybe Fifi did it because she was tired of being bullied by Camille.
Shut up. I couldn't contain the smile finding its way across my lips. You think you're funny.
I'm pretty funny.
He winked.
Did you want to go to dinner tonight still?
Of course. I looked down at my list because I could feel the red starting to roll up my face in a full blush.
You look like you've got more writing to do.
He stood up. I stood up too.
I've got to go check on the boys before Betts comes over to sit with them while I go to work.
You're at the diner today? I asked and looked over at my phone that was still on the charger on the kitchen sink. I was checking to see if Betts had left me a message to clean today.
I'm going to be there for the breakfast and lunch crowd before coming back here for the summer sizzler. Dottie conned me into donating the pig for the roast.
He stood at the open camper door. The moon's rays were like a spotlight over top his head, making it appear as if he had a halo around him. Inwardly, I sighed. Then I'll see you at the party and for the supper you owe me. I was careful not to say date, even though it felt like a date. He gave me a nod and disappeared into the dawn. Fifi, you might be going home quicker than you want to, I said to the white furball that had curled up with her paw resting on the stuffed animal. You are cute. There was a slight flutter in my heart. Was her cuteness getting to me? I let out a long sigh, shook my head, sent Betts a quick text about helping out if needed, and refilled my cup with coffee before I headed back to the bathroom to get a shower. The entire time I got ready, I continued to think about how I could get my hands on any documents to do with the KKA. Maybe someone was there to hurt Fifi, and Camille was in the way. It appeared that nothing was too strange for this dog business. The phone chirped a text while I put the shorts and t-shirt back on for the day. The day was still going to be a scorcher. My hair would dry naturally, and hopefully I'd be able to pull it back up in a couple of hours to keep it out of my face, though I was planning on fixing it before my date, supper with Ty tonight. I checked on the text, and it was Bet's. She said that she hated to ask me, but she was on her way to Ty's to watch the boys, and she always cleaned the police station on Saturday morning at 6 a.m. before they got too busy. I figured I'd call you, I said when Betts answered her phone. I'd love to help, but how do you clean the police department?
It's easy, she whispered into the phone. All the rooms have trash cans. Those need to be emptied. I sweep the floors with a broom, since they are that nasty old tile stuff. I don't mop this week. That's next week, but I should be back next week. She continued to tell me things I needed to make sure were done, and I scribbled them down on a pad of paper where I'd written down my thoughts on Camille's murder.
Are you sure you don't mind? She asked. Not at all. I flipped a couple of pieces of paper on the pad back and looked at the list I'd started to make. I needed to talk to Tammy Jo, and this was how it was going to happen.
Great. Come down here and get the van. It shouldn't take you too long, since you'll be back in plenty of time before the summer sizzler, she said.
No problem. Dottie took this on herself as the new event coordinator of the campground. We had a couple more exchanges before we hung up. I changed again into a t-shirt that I didn't mind getting all dirty, along with a different pair of shorts. Fifi, you be a good girl, I called to her, grabbing my purse on the way out.
Are you sure you don't mind?
Bets asked as the humidity filled around us. She fanned her hand in front of her face.
I even left a detailed note on what to clean on the passenger seat, just in case you said yes.
Not at all, in fact. I looked around. The dawn had transformed into an orange and yellow tinted sky, with Daniel Boone National Park poking up. This was one of the reasons I loved living here. This was nature at its finest, and I'd realized how much I'd missed it living in the city. Did you hear about Tammy Jo Bentley's dog nanny, Camille Braun?
I did. Poor Lester got the call.
She shook her head. She drew her hand up to her mouth.
I forgot you cleaned for me at her house. Did you see anything?
I found her when I went to pick up your check, which I still didn't get. I pinched my lips.
We probably won't get it, but I'll still pay you.
Bets looked over her shoulder at the camper.
The boys are asleep, but I have a second. Tell me about how you found her.
I quickly told her how I picked up Ty, which was met with a giggle of glee that came right from Bets's gut. Then I led into how I went to get the check and saw Camille.
I can't believe this. This is the second time a dead body has found its way into your life since you moved here,
she said with a dazed expression. Sheesh, tell me about it. You've not heard anything yet. I pointed down to my camper. Tammy Jo thinks I can keep Fifi for her while she's in jail. Her lawyer dropped her off to me last night. Bet seemed to really enjoy me keeping Fifi because she let out a laugh as if I'd sincerely amused her. Did you know that watch on the mantel is worth $2.2 million? I asked her, since I knew she had to dust it on a weekly basis.
I knew it had to be worth something, since it's thought to be the reason Camille was killed,
she said, grabbing my attention. What? There was disbelief in my voice. No wonder she said that she'd told me too much when I went to see her in the holding cell. Maybe it was something Hank had known and told her to keep quiet about. I gnawed on the edge of my lip, listening intently to what she had to say.
Yeah, didn't you know it's been stolen?
She asked, looking back after a light came on in the camper.
I've got to go. Thanks.
She waved me off after exchanging keys, leaving me there with more questions and theories to add to my list. 3. I'd gone back to the bedroom to gather my laundry to take to the laundry club, and by the time I got back, Bobby Ray had fallen asleep at the kitchen table. I didn't have the heart to wake him up. After all, he'd walked all the way to Normal, and he had to be exhausted. I scribbled a quick note with my cell phone number on it and told him to go to the campground office to use the phone if he needed me, which I didn't anticipate. The humidity hit me as soon as I opened the door. My hair was growing by the second. The Ford Escort was going to be as hot as a firecracker when I got in. Bets Hager had played an instrumental part in getting me the Ford Escort to drive around town instead of the camper. The camper was nice to drive when I went to visit other parks, but not to run errands. That would take forever, since I'd have to secure everything in the camper that wasn't nailed, screwed, or tied down. I was truly grateful for the car. The Escort was a donation to Normal Baptist Church, the church where Betts's husband, Lester, was the pastor. Grassel's gas station was the only gas station in downtown Normal. Joel Grassel was the only employee and mechanic. I'd heard him say over and over that he wished he knew a good mechanic to hire. I just might have the one for him. Stopping by to see him went on my mental to-do list of things I had to do while I was in town. The trees were in full late summer bloom, and they stood like soldiers on each side of the curvy country road on the way into town, giving a nice shade that sent a cool breeze through the roll-down windows. Though the campground was considered to be in the country at the base of Daniel Boone National Park, it only took a short 5 to 10 minutes, depending if you got behind a tractor or a slow driver, to get into the cozy downtown area. By the time I'd made it to town, my shirt was drenched with sweat. The heat didn't seem to bother the tourists. The downtown businesses looked busy with people coming and going. The sidewalks were filled with what looked to be window shopping customers. The little shops ranged from the smelly dog groomer to Cookie Crumble Bakery. Each shop was freestanding with a small courtyard between shops. This allowed each shop to have a unique feature to offer customers. Dieter's Feed and Seed had an adorable pop-up tent with a campfire and a s'more-making station for customers. The tented chalkboard sign in front of the Sweet Smell Flower Shop said there was a succulent plant craft in their courtyard. Succulent plants were a perfect touch for an RV and easy to take care of. Main Street was divided by a median with a one-way street on each side. I circled the median when I noticed a parking space right in front of the Tough Nickel. It was perfect. I'd get Bobby Ray a couple of outfits, head on over to the laundry club to wash them with the little bit of clothes I had, and stop by to see Joel before I headed back to the campground. It sounded like a good plan. The median was a combination of grass and stepping stones that was packed with people walking around or sitting on the picnic tables under the pavilion. There were more picnic tables among the large oak trees on each side of an amphitheater. A few children were running around the open-air theater with their arms out like airplanes. Normal really did know how to showcase Southern charm with the thick white pillars you'd see on the front porch of a plantation home holding up the pavilion. The real gas lanterns hanging from the lampposts added to the charm, along with the ceramic planters that showcased the amazing wildflowers that bloomed in this hot heat. Like the campground, twinkle lights were strung all over the place.
"Good afternoon, Mae."
Buck, the owner of the Tough Nickel, greeted me from behind the glass counter that was in the middle of the open store.
"How's that couch working out for you?"
"I love it. It's the perfect size for me to lay on and relax." I smiled. I have to admit that sometimes I fall asleep on it and don't move until the next morning.
"When you get older,"
he rubbed his neck,
"you'll pay for that."
He continued to rub like there was a kink in it. He had coal-black hair. He was tall and skinny. From what I gathered, he was in his late 60s, but didn't look past his 50s. "I'm actually here to check out the men's clothes. Size 32 shorts and medium tees or short sleeves." I headed to the steps that led upstairs to where I kept the clothing section of the store. All the items on the lower level were antiques and not thrift store items. The thrift store section was in the back of the building.
"You know where they are."
He went back to whatever he was doing. The steps creaked with every step I took. Heat rises, and in this old house-turned-shop, the air was thick, almost choking me by the time I got to the top. Thankfully, the clothes were hung and labeled by size. I just grabbed a couple of tan pairs of shorts and some basic shirts. It'd be plenty for Bobby Ray, since I planned to look through Paul's boxes in the storage unit back at the campground. When I walked back down the steps to pay for the clothes, I noticed Joel Grassel, owner of Grassel's gas station, was leaning up against the counter talking to Buck. He had on his usual overalls with grease spots. He was a hard worker, and it showed.
I see your car's still running.
Joel rubbed the top of his buzz cut with his hand. It's perfect. If you get a lead on a pretty cheap car, I'm in the market to buy one and let the church have this one back. I put the armful of clothes on the counter. Buck picked each one up and used the old cash register to ring me up. Actually, I was going to stop by and see you on my way back to Happy Trails. Are you still looking for a mechanic? I asked.
Yeah, a good one that can work on farming equipment, campers, and a few cars. You know any?
He asked. I do. I have a friend in town, and he's here because he's between jobs. I took the money out of my purse and handed it to Buck after he gave me the total. He said it's really hard to get work because of the technology and new cars.
That's why I'm having a hard time finding help. No one wants to work on the old engines.
Joel shook his head. Buck shook his head.
Why is it that no one wants to work anymore?
Can I send him to the gas station to talk to you? I asked, and took the bag of clothes Buck put on the counter.
I'd love to talk to him, and if he's a friend of yours, he's got to be a hard worker.
Joel shook the greasy hank from the front pocket of his overalls and wiped his hands. He took a card from his wallet.
Give him this.
I will. I put the card in my back pocket. His name is Bobby Ray Bond.
I look forward to meeting him.
He gave me one big nod before he and Buck went back to their conversation. Instead of moving the car and risking not finding a closer parking spot near the laundry club, I got my bag of dirty laundry, added the thrift shop clothes I'd gotten for Bobby Ray, slung it over my shoulder, and dodged the people on the busy sidewalk. The laundry club was packed, too. All the machines were taken.
If it ain't Maybelline Grant.
Queenie French smiled as bright as the yellow and teal leggings, matching top, and white leg warmers she was wearing. It was one of her many jazzercise outfits. She was an instructor, and from what I'd heard, did pretty well for her age. Dottie called, huh? I flipped the laundry bag from over my shoulder to the ground, looking around to see if one of the machines were open.
She couldn't wait to tell us.
Queenie adjusted her headband and tapped on the electric globe, where she pretended to see into the future. She couldn't. She just liked to shock people who came into the laundromat.
I see in your future a man from your past that's going to take you to the cleaners. And I don't mean the laundry club.
She let out a laugh, making everyone in the laundromat turn to see what was so funny. I'd opted to use the washing machines closest to the front of the shop. With the bag open, I sorted between the whites and the darks. Stop it, I laughed. If it weren't for Bobby Ray, I'd not be here right now. Besides, I paid him back the money he loaned me, so there's no miscommunication. That's good, Abby Fawn said. Hi, I greeted Abby, the normal librarian and local Tupperware consultant. I didn't see you over there. I'm filling in the bookshelf. Instead of ripping the covers off old and beat-up books to throw away, she'd bring them to the laundry club. Now that we have so many tourists, they love reading, and the books fly off the shelf. It was one of those take-what-you-want shelves, and it made Abby's heart soar. Abby took her phone out of her pocket. Hashtag new books at the laundry club bookshelf. Hashtag laundry. Hashtag normal. She spoke out loud while she did all her social media. She put her phone back in her pocket after a few more taps. I just made some fresh coffee, too. Abby pointed the book in her hand toward the coffee stand that was also for the customers of the laundry club. Go grab us some, and we can discuss this Bobby Ray situation. Before I'd come back to Kentucky, I didn't have a whole lot of true friends or confidants. Who'd ever thought that I'd find a group of women that I'd come to trust and consider sisters in, of all places, a laundromat? Abby and Queenie had already taken a seat near the washing machine I'd picked. "You're doing his laundry?" Queenie held up a pair of the shorts I'd just bought. "I'm not sure what Dottie said," I started before Queenie interrupted, "but Joel over at Grassel's is in need of a mechanic. Bobby would be perfect for the job. I saw Joel over at the thrift shop, and he gave me his card to give to Bobby." "She just said that some shady guy from your past showed up, and she's sure he's only there to get money from you." Queenie crossed her arms and gave me a cross look. "To clear things up, you know that my family was killed in our house fire when I was a teenager. It was a memory that I didn't like to bring up, and the years after weren't as kind either. But it was my past, and I was good at putting that behind me, until part of that past showed up this morning. Bobby Ray was one of the foster kids in my last foster home. He had a full-time mechanic job and literally saved all his money. We'd spend hours talking about when we left Kentucky, what we were going to do with our life. He wanted to be a race car driver. I'd completely forgotten about that. I smiled at the passion he'd had for it. Anyways, for my 18th birthday, he gave me a card with $3,000 in it. It was enough to get me a ticket on the Greyhound and make a down payment to flight attendant school. Dottie didn't make him sound that nice. She said his hair looked like cats had been sucking on it, and his clothes... She fanned her hand in front of her face. "He's gotten older like me. His hair is thinned, and he walked here." I still couldn't believe it. I let him take a shower while I grabbed some of Paul's old clothes out of the storage unit. Since I needed to get some laundry done, I figured I'd stop by the Tough Nickel and grab him a few pairs of shorts. That's all. "You're so nice," Abby shrugged a shoulder to Queenie. "I bet he was thrilled to see you." "He actually saw all the social media you'd been doing for the campground and read the article about the Happy Trails in that National Parks of America magazine. I don't mind him being here. I'd be eternally grateful for all the hard work that Abby did." He said that he didn't come here to get paid back. He did mention he was down on his luck, but I got some change out of my purse and slipped the coins in the machine slot, selecting the hot cycle for whites. Joel Grassel said he was looking for a mechanic and would like to talk to Bobby Ray. "Really?" She looked as pleased as a plump peach. "That's great. A long-lost family member." "Whoa." I shook my head and ran my finger around the top of the mug. "We are far from family." He was really never around the foster family. Actually, we all tried to get jobs as soon as we could, so we weren't around. "You didn't like your foster family?" Abby questioned. We all turned when we heard the dingy bell over the door. It was Bets Hager, the owner of the laundry club and the wife of Pastor Lester. I liked them fine and would be forever grateful for them taking me in. But when you're a teenager and strangers tell you how to act, and it really didn't line up with the way my parents raised me, it's kind of hard. I scooted my chair closer to Queenie to make room for Bets. "Where have you been lately?" Queenie asked Bets, since she's the one who kept tabs on everyone. "I've been busier than a one-legged man in a kick-the-can contest," she huffed and melted back into the seat. "My cleaning side hustle has got me swamped. I really think people don't want to clean in this heat." "I don't blame them. I'm having a hard time getting people to come to Jazzercise." Queenie took a drink of her coffee. "It'll break soon," she said, referring to the temperature. "I seen your flyers about the monthly campground get-together. Summer sizzling party." She wiggled her brows. "Very creative." "It's all Abby's marketing and Dottie's idea. I had to give credit where credit was due." "Hey, I hear you've got a visitor," she said. "I called the campground office to talk to you, and Dottie told me all about him. I told her that sometimes people just want to reconnect." "Spoken like a true preacher's wife," Queenie muttered. Bets ignored her. "What did you need?" I asked. "I was wondering if you had any residents that wanted some part-time work. I need some help with cleaning. I've not been able to get my job at the church done, and Lester is working away on all the sermons since the tourists have been coming to church. That just tickles his fancy." "What does part-time mean?" I asked. It was no secret that I'd worked at the library for Abby to get a little extra cash. It helped pay back some of the millions of dollars Paul had taken from people. I'd made that my mission. I knew I'd never make up nearly what they lost on a financial or mental or emotional level, but I had good intentions. Every time I could give something back, whether it was my time or money, it made my guilt about what he'd done a smidgen better. "I need someone to clean a few apartments at the nursing home on the senior living side." She took her phone out of her purse. "I have 2 little old women who don't really require too much. They just love to talk, so that really takes up time. Plus, I pick them up on Sunday to take them to church." "Tilly and Olga?" I asked, remembering them from church because they weren't only the cutest of best friends, but they did talk my head off once. I admit that since then, I'd kept my head down and avoided them. "That's them," she laughed. "Seriously, they barely have trash that needs to be emptied, but once a week, I'm there. Truthfully, I feel bad for taking their money because I feel like they are paying me to just talk to them." "I can do it. It gets me out of the campground during this hot weather, and I can work in air conditioning." It sounded like a pretty easy part-time job to me, and I liked visiting with the women at church. "Are you sure?" Bets's voice took an upswing. "Absolutely. I can help you clean until your other businesses slow down for you. When do I start?" I asked. "This afternoon too early?" She gave me a pouty look. "No, I can do it," I said, and watched her face soften. "Seriously, you have no idea how much time that frees me up. This afternoon is Tammy Jo Bentley's house. Now I can stay here and do all the necessary work for the laundromat." She looked behind her. "Just like everything else, it's really booming in here." "Tammy Jo?" Queenie's nose curled. "She was down at the Smelly Dog with that designer pooch of hers." Queenie's eyes rolled. "Fifi," she said with some sort of fancy rich woman's accent. "I heard about that." Beth snapped her fingers. Her face flushed when we all looked at her. "Just because I'm a preacher's wife doesn't mean I'm not privy to gossip." "You go on and tell it then," Queenie encouraged her. "I said I hear gossip, not take part in telling it." Bets recovered herself as we all laughed. "What happened?" Abby scooted on the edge of her chair in anticipation before she took her phone out. #SmellyDog. #normal. Get your dog groomed while #hiking. You know Ethel Biddle don't like no one telling her how to cut her clients. Well, I heard Tammy Jo told Ethel how she wanted that poodle cut. When Ethel shaved the pom-pom off that dog's tail, Tammy Jo lost her ever-loving mind right there in the Smelly Dog. I know Tammy is particular about that dog." Bets lifted her chin up and down slowly. "She brought it to church." Queenie and Abby gasped. "Right into Sunday school." Missy King's eyes blew up like 2 balloons. When Lester told Tammy Jo that she couldn't bring the dog because of Missy King's allergies, she had the nerve to ask Missy King to leave the congregation, Bet said with a dropped jaw. After she said that to Missy, I swear, Missy said things that would make the devil himself blush. Another round of collective gasps came from Queenie and Abby. "You ain't allergic to dogs, are you?" Bets turned to me. "'Cause if you are, I suggest you take you a couple of antihistamines before you go. I've got a box in the glove compartment. I take a couple before I go in, just for good measure." "No," I shook my head. "I don't ever recall allergies." "Good. I'm so happy you can start today. In case you did say yes, I put together a list of what needs to be cleaned today. It's pretty simple. Are you sure you're okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," I assured her. "Mm-hmm." She pulled a notebook out of her purse. "Here's a list of things she likes, and I check them off as I go because she's strange and will go over your work. Also, you can take my van and I'll take your car. We can switch up sometime later." She dug deep in her purse and pulled out a set of keys.
I just take the push cart out of the back and load it up and push it all around the house.
It sounded easy enough, and the list didn't look so bad. I pulled my keys out of my pocket and traded with her.
While I'm here, don't forget we have book club this week. But I thought we could go ahead and talk about next month's book while we are here.
Abby looked at each of us individually, and when we all shook our heads, she continued,
Great. I thought since it was the end of summer and it's so hot, we could pick Heated Passion.
Jeez Louise, Abby.
Queenie's distaste for the book was written all over her face.
Did you get that recommendation from Jean's beauty shop? Because all I heard about down there while they were dyeing my roots was how much they just couldn't put it down.
Then it's a good book? I questioned.
If you like that sort.
Queenie turned away and folded her arms across her chest in the only way she knew to protest.
If you have a better pick, let's hear it,
Bet said, trying to keep the peace.
Nope, you've all done decided. I can't guarantee I can finish it in time. I'm pretty busy at jazzercise.
She blinked several times. Bets looked down at her phone when it chirped. Abby took the time to do a little social media.
I thought you just said jazzercise was slow.
Abby didn't look up from her phone. Hashtag book club meeting at hashtag the laundry club.
Oh no.
Bet stood up and put her phone back in her purse.
Lester just texted me. He's on the way to the hospital. Ron Randall has burnt his hand, and I've got to go look after his boys.
Is he okay? I asked.
Lester didn't say. I've got to go. I'll text y'all about his condition when I hear.
She darted through the laundry club and out the door. My stomach did a flip-flop, wondering if Ty Randall would come visit his dad from San Francisco. Not that I had a thing for Ty. There just seemed to be something unsaid between us when he left town. 4. After I finished my laundry, I decided to walk down to Normal Diner, the diner Ron Randall owned. If I was going to clean someone else's toilet, I was going to need a shot of something good. Normal Diner was the perfect place. There was a big piece of me that wanted to hear about Ron's accident, too. The diner was just as cute and southern as the other downtown shops. It was your standard greasy spoon with home-cooked meals and was a diamond in the rough. The L-shaped diner had a row of stools against a counter to the left and a few booths along the right side in front of a wall of windows. Every chair and booth had sparkly fake leather vinyl that had seen better days, but I chalked it up to adding character to the place. It was a hole-in-the-wall place that was a treasure to find. "Hey, Trudy," I called to the young waitress behind the counter when our eyes met after I pushed through the door. Her dishwater blonde hair was pulled back into a ponytail. The diner's apron was tied around her full waist. There was a big smile on her face.
"Mae," she gasped. "Did you hear about Ron?"
she asked and leaned her 5'8" frame on the counter.
"I did. It's awful."
I shook my head. "I was over at the laundry club, and Bets Hager got the call.
How is he?"
I eased down onto the last stool at the end of the counter. Trudy lifted the lid on the glass pie stand in front of my seat and scooped out a piece of peach cobbler, setting the plate in front of me.
"He was frying some catfish, and he got to talking through the window to the regular old geezers who come in here. They were gabbing about hunting season, and Ron forgot about the fish. The fire alarms went off, and without thinking, he grabbed the fryer basket with his bare hands."
She shook her head and put a napkin and fork in front of me.
"I'd warned him so many times that he needed new ones with the grip handles that don't get hot, but he never listens to me. Nobody ever listens to me," she grumbled, wiping down the spot next to me after the customer left.
Trudy swiped his ticket and money, putting it in the front pocket of her apron.
"You enjoy that. Carol down at the farmer's market sold Ron her fresh peaches, and it's to die for. Of course, if you talk to Pam Purcell, she'd say that her peaches are better, but they ain't."
She grabbed a wet rag from behind the counter and wiped down the counter.
"Plus, Pam's cost more. I don't know why. They grow in the same limestone and soil, watered with the same tap water."
She rambled on about people I didn't even know. I nodded like I completely understood her and took a bite of the pie. When she came up for air, I said, I don't know Pam or her peaches, but Carol's are delicious. Did you call Ty? Trudy stopped dead in her tracks. She swung her hip to the right and planted her hand on her waist. Mae West? She shook a finger at me with her free hand. You've got something for him, don't you?
Who do you have something for?
Detective Hank Sharp sat down next to me on the empty stool. Ty Randall. Trudy shimmied her shoulders. No, I don't. I just asked if someone had called Ty about his dad. That's all. I had no idea why I was explaining myself to Detective Hank, as I like to call him, although the last time Ty was in town, the uncomfortable situation I thought about earlier was interrupted by an unexpected visit from Detective Hank.
What about Ron?
Hank asked. He'd obviously not been privy to the gossip about Ron's fryer incident. Didn't you hear? Trudy scooped Hank a big piece of cobbler and put it in front of him. He got real bad burned on his hand. Had to go to the emergency room. She nodded with big eyes.
Carol's peaches?
He asked between bites. Mm-hmm. Trudy hummed and grabbed a pot of coffee. She walked down the long counter to refill all the mugs lined up, leaving me alone with Hank.
You've got a thing for Ty Randall?
Hank turned his head, his green eyes piercing through me. Are you serious? I blew him off. His father is raising his 2 younger brothers. He's in the hospital. The last time Ron Randall was in the hospital,
the prodigal son arrived home to save the day. Or should I say diner?
He tried to joke. I hardly think Ron's open-heart surgery is something to be made fun of. Besides, Ty did come back here to run the diner and raise his brothers. Remember, their mother died years ago of cancer. You could have a little sympathy. I took the last bite of cobbler and pushed the plate away, taking a $5 bill from my pocket. I stood and dropped the money on the counter. It was good seeing you, Detective Hank.
Did you forget that Ron had a heart attack because your ex-husband almost took this diner from him?
Hank's jaw tensed. You know what? I sucked in a deep breath, calming myself. Never mind. I don't have time to fuss with you.
What?
He smiled. His pearly white teeth, green eyes, and black hair against his olive skin were almost perfection. If only he didn't have this macho attitude.
I gave you a coffee pot as a peace offering.
What's your problem with Ty Randall? I asked.
I don't have no problem with Ty.
He tried to convince me, but I'd seen them together when Ty was in town, and there was definitely something off between them. His phone buzzed. He yanked it out of the clip on his belt and took a long look at it before he put it back. I don't believe you, I shrugged.
Don't be going around using those investigation skills you think you've got on trying to dig up something that's not there,
he warned, reminding me how I'd stuck my nose into the death of my ex-husband.
Gotta go. Duty calls.
What, a bear's breaking into someone's car? I joked and watched him get up.
Not on park duty today.
He wasn't going to give me any juicy gossip about the text.
Thanks, Trudy. Loved the cobbler.
I twisted the stool around and watched Hank leave the diner. From the first day we met, there'd been a little tension. There was tension between us when we were alone and not talking about his job, and there was tension when we were alone and talking about his job. It was something I'd yet to put my finger on, but didn't go unnoticed. To let my cobbler digest before I headed over to Tammy Joe's to clean her toilets, I decided to go to the hospital to see Ron Randall's condition for myself. I'd actually gotten close to Ron since I moved to Normal. Maybe it was his sad story and how I admired him for raising his sons on his own and running a business. Not that his oldest son, Ty, with his messy blonde hair, crystal blue eyes, and southern charm, had anything to do with my feelings. I gulped back the images of the last time I'd seen Ty. We were interrupted by my lawyer, Stanley. Stanley had popped into Happy Trails to tell me that he'd found a buyer for the campground. At that time, everyone in Normal and Happy Trails thought I was staying. Stanley didn't know that I'd already decided to stay, but that's not what Ty heard. He must have thought I was abandoning the campground like my deceased ex-husband had done, making me no different than Paul. But he didn't stick around to hear me tell Stanley that I wasn't selling. I'd found a home and friends in Normal, something that didn't have a price. When I went to tell Ty, he was nowhere to be found. The next day, I found out that since his dad was home and better, he'd gone back to San Francisco, where he'd been a pretty popular chef. When I saw Ron in the diner, and a few times at Happy Trails, where he'd brought Ty's 2 younger brothers fishing, I couldn't bring myself to ask about Ty. Surely Ty knew from his dad that I didn't sell the campground, but that was now water under the bridge. Lester Hager was in the emergency waiting room. He stood up to greet me. I motioned for him to stay seated. He looked tired. The dark circles under his eyes were a shade of gray. He had black hair that was always so neatly parted to the right and clean cut. He stood about 6 foot and had a slight gut that I was sure came from all the good food the Bible thumpers, what we called the church ladies, made. He and Bets were young, and they had so many great ideas for the community and the world. "Pastor," I greeted him and sat on the edge of the chair next to his. "How's Ron?"
They are working on getting the skin cleaned up so they can bandage it. They're talking skin grafts and some sort of oxygen chamber. Those poor kids.
He folded his hands in his lap.
I've got Bets over at his house staying there. I know she's got all sorts of houses to clean, and she's just a saint.
She is. We're glad to have you both here in Normal. I sat back. I wasn't sure how long I was going to stay, but he seemed like he could use the company. "Can I get you something?"
"Nah, I'm good."
His phone rang.
"It's Ty."
He stood up and walked across the emergency room where there was a little more privacy. The mention of his name made my stomach drop. I sucked in a deep breath to get oxygen to my brain. While he talked, people started to show up. Alvin Dieters, owner of Dieters Feed and Seed, Buck, owner of the Tough Nickel, and Joel Grassel, owner of Grassel's gas station. They were regulars at the diner, as well as lifelong friends of Ron.
"Any news?"
Alvin asked. The other 2 looked at me over his shoulder. "I had just got here. Pastor said they are trying to clean it up, but nothing yet." I gestured where Pastor had walked away. Ty was calling, so he stepped away.
"The boys?"
Joel asked. "Bets is with them." It was times like these that all the gossip and tales weren't important. This was when the community came together. I should know. Even after what Paul had done to them, they still accepted me and supported everything I needed to bring the campground back to life.
"I'm going to head down to the cafeteria and get a cup of coffee. Anyone want anything?"
Buck asked his friends.
"I'll go with you. They got good coffee."
Joel nodded. All 3 of them went to get coffee, and Pastor was still on the phone. "Family of Ron Randall?" a nurse called from the sliding glass window. "I'm with Ron." I wasn't family, but there was no family, and Pastor didn't look over. "He can have a visitor now." She pushed a button, and the double doors slowly started to open. She met me on the other side. "He's going to need a minor surgery. I just wanted to warn you before you see him. He's in a lot of pain." I followed her down the hall. She stopped in front of room 10, whipping the curtain open.
"Mae?"
He had a surprised look on his face. His hand was dangling up in the air like it was on a hook. When he tried to push himself up a little, a groan escaped him.
"I wasn't sure who was out there. They said someone was here."
"You just lie there and don't move," I instructed him. "You've got a whole crew out there." I walked over to his bed. "Everyone went to get coffee, so you got me." I smiled. "How are you?"
"From what I hear, I've got to have a quick surgery. Then they want to put me back in that darn nursing home for physical therapy."
He seemed to be in better spirits than I expected.
"I guess I'm going to have to find a babysitter for the boys."
"I'm not much of a babysitter, but they can stay with me until we can find someone. I know that Bets has them now. Really, she's the best." Not that I had to convince him, but I was putting my foot in my mouth as soon as I opened it. I didn't know a thing about kids.
"She's so busy. I mean, the boys know the campground. and you really don't have to watch them much. I can get Bets to clean Ty's camper." He let out a long sigh. "Ty, has anyone called him?"
Pastor was on the phone with him when they called for someone to come back. Just as the words left my mouth, Lester came in.
"Pastor Lester, thank you for coming."
Ron was still a polite man under these circumstances.
"Mae said you talked to Ty." "Yes, he's booked on a plane ticket for tomorrow. He's getting in around 10 in the morning and flying into Bluegrass Airport."
I tried to keep my face from doing some sort of contortion while I continued to listen to Lester give the details of Ty's arrival.
"I'd be happy to pick him up from the airport, but Bets and I have a funeral at church. Your younger boys can go to the children's room and play. Me and Bets love having them." "Mae, can you get him?" Ron asked.
"Me?" My eyes jumped open. "Yeah, sure. I can take the boys with me."
"They wouldn't do good on the couple-hour drive. They can stay back at the campground with Henry."
Ron was much more trusting of Henry than I would be, but then again, they were his kids.
"I hate to ask you to do that. Keep the boys tonight, and clean Ty's camper. That's a lot."
"I live there anyways." I gulped. What had I just done to myself? "It's not a problem." When the other men came in, I excused myself, but not before Pastor Lester gave me the information I needed to be at the airport to pick up Ty. The entire way across Normal to Tammy Jo Bentley's house, I rehearsed how I was going to greet Ty when I did pick him up. I found myself apologizing to my imaginary passenger. 5. Getting used to driving Bets's minivan was my first adventure of the afternoon, but that was only the beginning. I pulled into Tammy Jo's neighborhood and noticed all the beautifully manicured green lawns with billowing white dogwood trees. Tammy Jo Bentley's house was on the right, behind a big concrete wall with a wrought iron gate with a B in the middle. The gate started to open before I could even push the button to announce my arrival. Bats didn't tell me that Tammy Jo obviously had money. Right off the bat, I recognized the black car parked close to the house. It was Hank Sharp's. Was the text he'd gotten at the diner about Tammy Jo? There was only one way to find out. I opened the back of the van and looked down Bets's list. Vacuum the vents. I looked into the back and took out the cart, popping it into locked position. I dragged out the vacuum and stuck it in the bottom of the cart. Dust all furniture and the baseboards in the family room. Be sure to clean the kitchen and the dining room thoroughly, along with the guest bathroom on the first floor. No other rooms this week, I read out loud. There were a couple of buckets that had tags with names attached to the handles. There was one for TJB, which I figured had to be Tammy Jo's. When I looked into it, there appeared to be everything I needed from furniture polish to toilet cleaner.
"Bats, how are you doing?"
Hank Sharp's voice startled me. I jumped around, both of us equally shocked to be standing in front of the other.
"Mae?"
Behind him stood a woman about 5 feet 10 inches tall, with frosted blonde hair that was short on the side but styled high on top. Back in my day, we called that the public school poof. Big hair from the 80s. She wore a pleated pair of white pants, along with a sleeveless, hot pink polka dot shirt. The poodle she was holding had on a bow the same color pink as Tammy Jo's polka dots. Fifi. "Who are you?" Tammy Jo eyed me suspiciously and pulled her dog closer to her like I was some dog thief. The dog yipped and wiggled around in Tammy Jo's arms before it squirmed right on out, scurrying over to me. A man walked out the front door and stood on the porch. "Fifi!" Tammy Jo screamed and bolted down the steps, almost walking out of her heeled shoes with the pink pom-pom on the top. "What did Mama teach you about stranger danger?" Apparently, Fifi was fond of me. She continued to jump nearly up to my waist, her furless tail helicoptering around each time. I bent down to get a quick little rub down her back before Tammy jerked her back up into her arms. The man stood close to her side. He rubbed Fifi like my smell had harmed her, and he was checking to see if she was okay.
"This is Mae West, owner of Happy Trails, and I'd like to know what she's doing here, too."
Hank glared at me suspiciously.
Mae, this is Norman Peddleman. He's an insurance man in town.
Norman offered a slight smile. His neat and tidy short blonde hair was parted to the side with such precise detail that the part showed his scalp. He could use a little sun, I thought, looking at his pale skin. The light brown suit seemed to hang off of him. I'd heard of Norman Peddleman. He'd actually left a message on the Happy Trails answering machine about insurance for the campground, but I went to Heidelman Insurance Agency. I felt like Mr. Heidelman gave me a good deal since I ended up giving him a good deal on his new yearly lease for his lot space. "Nice to meet you," I nodded at Norman. He lifted his dark brown briefcase towards me in a welcoming way. "I'm filling in for Bets Hager while she takes care of Ron Randall's boys." I pushed the toe of my shoe down on the brake of the cart to release it and began to push it around to the side of the house where Bets had written to enter. "Wait just a second." Tammy Jo's voice was terse. Her hand lifted and tried like heck to push back some of her bangs, but the hairspray was like cement. Then my mind wondered if the sun was going to bake her hair in that position. "She didn't tell me anything about this. I don't know your cleaning skills. I have a huge party here tomorrow with the local KKA, and I can't let anything go wrong." Tammy Jo wore a bird-thin scowl on her heavily rouged pink lips. Her lashes fluttered as fast as a hummingbird's wings. "KKA?" I asked as if it mattered, but my curiosity got me. "Kentucky Kennel Association." She announced her words just like a true Southerner, drawing out each syllable. "I've spent the better part of the last year getting them to let me host the annual meeting, and I've got to have an immaculate house." Her eyes drew up and down me as if she were assessing my cleanliness. "And an immaculate Fifi." She put the poodle up to her face, making kissy noises. "I promise you that I'll do a wonderful job." Not that I wanted to kiss Miss Fancy Pants's hiney in front of Hank Sharp. By the look on his face, he was clearly enjoying this. "I assured Bets I'd take care of you."
"It's fine," Norman spoke up. "Let her do her job. We don't have time between now and tomorrow to find someone you think can clean better."
"Hank?" She looked at him like he was going to give me a recommendation right on the spot, and as if his opinion was the only one that mattered.
"Aw, she checks out fine, Mrs. Bentley."
His southern drawl was as thick and sweet as molasses. "Fine, but you need to get up that dirt stain on my carpet in front of the mantel. Do you got it?" She glared at me. I nodded. "Go on, then, and stay out of my way," she threatened before I got the cart pushed around the corner of the house. There were big white tents set up in the backyard. In front of each tent was a big ice block with ice carvers chipping away. The middle tent ice sculpture was definitely in the image of Fifi. The Daniel Boone National Park was the backdrop beyond the tents, and it was breathtaking, even though the day was a scorcher. I stopped pushing the cart when I noticed there were 3 doors. I looked around the cart for Bets's notebook to see exactly which door I was supposed to use, because heavens to Betsy, I go in the wrong door. Tammy Jo might have Hank arrest me for trespassing. I locked the cart's wheels and hurried back to the van, almost running smack dab into a lanky gal with long brown hair, wearing light pink scrubs, and a slightly taller man in a blue jumpsuit. "I'm sorry." I tucked my head with an apology when I saw them jump apart, making me think I'd clearly interrupted something private. The notebook was right inside the back door of the van. I grabbed it and headed back around the house, a little more cautious this time. Luckily, the guy and gal were gone. The man in the blue jumpsuit was hunkered over the flower garden next to the deck, and the young woman was nowhere in sight. In the instructions, Bet said to use the middle door. Once inside, the wheels on the metal cart squeaked across the marble floor with each rotation. I kept looking back to make sure the wheels didn't leave some sort of mark. That'd make extra work, and I was counting the hours until I got out of there. The kitchen didn't take too long to clean. It didn't look like there'd been much cooking going on in there. I made quick work of the bathroom, too. The family room had tall ceilings with a big chandelier hanging in the middle. There were 3 white leather couches with a coffee table in front of each one. There was crystal and china poodle knickknacks nestled all over the room. My insides groaned at the thought of wiping down all of them by hand. Bats had written to dust all the furniture and baseboards before vacuuming. There was a furniture polish with a hand mitt stuck on top. I pushed my hand into the mitt and sprayed polish on the glove. It was Tammy Jo's preferred method for dusting. I rolled my eyes and went over all the little figurines, followed by the larger pieces of furniture. Bats was right. There was a lot of dust. You do know that Tammy likes the furniture dusted before you vacuum. The same woman I'd seen outside, with the long brown hair and pink scrubs, walked through the double doors to the deck just outside of the family room. She ran a finger down the coffee table, then she held it up into the air to get a look. Not bad. Don't forget the watch on the mantel. She and I both looked over at the marble mantel. The only object displayed was a glass dome with what looked like a pocket watch inside. I won't. Tammy Jo asked me to get up the dirt stain in front of it. I walked over to look at the stain. Nothing that a little water couldn't get up. The young woman followed me. There was a strange look on her face when she noticed the stain. It's just dirt, I think. I bent down to make sure it wasn't something of Fifi's, like poop. Upon closer inspection, it was just dried mud. She picked up her foot and looked at the bottom of her shoe, repeating the process with the other. I'm not sure how that got there. Her brows furrowed with a worried look. What's so special about that? I asked, taking the conversation back to the watch. There wasn't anything special about the dirty carpet. I wasn't so sure why she was so concerned. It's a treasured family heirloom Tammy Jo acquired from Harrison Bentley. She walked closer to it and gazed at it. I assumed she was talking about Tammy Jo's husband, and from the way it sounded, I assumed Harrison was dead. It's worth $2.2 million. You could have knocked me over with a feather, I was so shocked. You're joking. I lifted a brow and took a little more interest in it. I walked over. It doesn't look special. It was a standard round gold pocket watch with a white background and 4 circles on its face. One of the circles had numbers, the one next to it had Roman numerals, and the other 2 had little black lines. There were black numbers around the entire circumference of the face. The gold chain had what looked like a small blue wand at the end. Nothing special to me. I'd never joke about $2.2 million. Tammy Jo has a person who comes every morning, puts on a pair of white gloves, lifts the lid, and uses the watch winding key to wind it. She inhaled deeply. It's special because the different ticks help train Fifi. Since Tammy Jo doesn't have children, she left it to Fifi and any offspring she might have. Who might have children? I rubbed my temples, trying to wrap my head around this concept of a $2.2 million watch that should clearly be in some sort of museum. Fifi? The woman said this as if it was no big deal that a dog was the beneficiary of this watch. My job is to keep Fifi in perfect health. She drew her hands in front of her, clasping them at her waist. We are going to be meeting people who might have a potential sire for our dear Fifi. What exactly is your job title? My right eyebrow rose. She perked up a little. I'm Fifi's nanny. You're joking, right? My eyes opened with amusement. I'd never joke about Fifi. Her jaw tensed. Nanny for a dog? I questioned. How much did that gig pay? Yes. Fifi is very special. She comes from a long line of distinguished breeding. She has to have the perfect amount of play, food, and sleep time. She spoke with pride. This girl was serious. I'm thrilled to have been here since the beginning. She'll be 4 this fall. We are hoping to breed her soon, since she's the perfect age. What makes this watch worth so much money? I asked. As hard as I tried, I couldn't take my eyes off it, nor could I even fathom what state of mind Tammy Jo had been in when leaving it to a dog. Not that I didn't love dogs. I did, just not wanting one for myself. It's got very detailed and complicated George Daniel parts. He was a famous watchmaker. There aren't many around, and they have so many details that it's fascinating. She was practically salivating at the mouth. All of his watches are done by hand, truly works of art. Now that Tammy Jo has mortgaged the entire estate to see to it that Fifi's DNA can be cloned to continue the breeding line, she's very particular about the watch. While she told me the history of the watch, I couldn't help but notice Hank, Tammy Jo, and Norman, minus Fifi, outside on the lawn. Tammy Jo was pointing to different things as Hank nodded. Clone the dog? I laughed. Tammy Jo Bentley was a whack job. By the look on the woman's face, she didn't find it at all funny. According to the $2.2 million watch, I've got to finish cleaning this house. Don't you have to get back to Fifi? I asked when I heard a door shut down the hall, followed by a woman's voice. She's napping. The dog nanny's face didn't move, but her eyes shifted towards the woman talking. She gets a mid-morning nap and a late afternoon nap. She inhaled deeply and glanced over at the window. I looked to see what, or who, she was watching. I didn't see Hank, Tammy Jo, or Norman, but I did see the man in the blue jumpsuit that I'd seen her talking to earlier. When he walked out of view, she looked back at me. Where's Bets? She had to take care of some church people. It was a short and simple answer. I didn't have time for chit-chat. I put the polish back in the cart and got the vacuum. The kitchen looks good, she said as if she'd inspected my work. Please tell Bets we miss her. What's your name? I asked. I wanted to make sure I got it right, so when I went back to the laundry club and told this ridiculous story, I'd get it right. The women wouldn't believe this crazy one. Maybe Bets would, since she's cleaned here, but she'd never tell. That's why it was my duty to get it all straight. Camille Braun. She turned and saw the man in the window again. This time he saw her, and they locked eyes. Goodbye, she whispered, and drifted out of the double doors to the back deck where she'd come in from. The outlet for the vacuum cleaner was next to the window. I looked out and saw the man in the blue jumpsuit walking down the back of the house and then slipping into one of the doors. I continued to watch Camille. She took the steps to the right of the deck. At the bottom, she looked around before she went through the same door as the man. Interesting, I said, and plugged in the vacuum as I let my imagination wonder if the gardener and the nanny were having a secret rendezvous, which would add some juicy gossip to my tale for the girls. I went back to the bucket on the cart and took out the screwdriver so I could unscrew the screws holding the wall vents in place, since Bats had specifically said to get those vacuumed. I went back to where the sweeper was plugged in and got down on my knees to unscrew the first vent. At first, I thought the voices I'd heard were coming from a television. I pulled back, resting on my haunches, and listened. I bent towards the vent and could clearly hear a conversation. Was it the dog nanny and the gardener? I wondered. My darling Camille, the voice came through the vent. I forgive you. Please, let's put it behind us. I can't do that, Ralphie. We'll never be an item. I have so much expected of me and the status of my position here. Tammy Jo will never accept us. If she finds out, she'll fire both of us. I can't let that happen. I love Fifi, and her future is my future security. Camille was a tough cookie, I thought. You were a fling. You need to know that. You are evil. You will regret your treatment of me. One day, you'll get what's coming to you, because you are a greedy tramp. Get out of my face. His words spat back at her. I bent down a little closer to see if I could hear the murmur that sounded like someone crying. There were sounds of scrambling, and I quickly turned the vacuum on to clean around the inside of the vent. The door to the deck flew open. Camille rushed through the family room with her hands covering her face. 6. You mean to tell me that you took the time to go to the diner and didn't find out a single thing about Ron Randall? Dottie asked when I got back to the office at Happy Trails Campground. Queenie said you were in there a while. Are you going to let me finish telling you before you interrupt me? I asked. Dottie was very good at trying to jump ahead in the story someone was telling her. I was actually eating a piece of peach cobbler. I thumbed through the reservations to see what available campers we had to put Bobby Ray in. I left out the part about seeing Hank because Dottie would have been all over that.
Carol's or Pam's peaches? She asked.
Carol's, I laughed. Living in Kentucky as an adult was really teaching me just how small the towns were in the state. With that came all the gossip and being into everyone's business.
Pam is going to have a conniption. I can see it now. Both of them swinging their Bibles at their Bible thumpers meeting.
Dottie shook her head, referring to Betts Hager's Bible Club that supplies all the food for local events, ministers to the criminals at the jails, and other various things. Dottie handed me a set of keys.
I know you're looking through the reservations to find your thieving friend a camper. Let him have this one.
You do have a soft spot. I took the keys. He's not a thief. Be nice. I gave him the money back like you suggested. That should make you feel better.
It don't. Did you see how comfortable he is out there?
She meandered over to the window, and I followed her.
Those khakis,
I groaned when I noticed Bobby Ray had taken a pair of scissors to them, making them the shortest khaki shorts I'd ever seen. They were expensive. What was I expecting? Paul and Bobby Ray were from 2 different planets. I should have realized that once I'd given them to Bobby Ray, they'd be regarded as a gift, not a loan. I shrugged it off. What was I going to do with them anyways? Back to Ron. I had to forget Bobby for a minute. I've also got a clean ties camper. Bets is going to keep the boys for Ron tonight. My face flushed. I'm picking up Ty at the airport in the morning.
Maybelline,
she tried to use her best Bobby Ray voice.
You're gonna have to juggle 2 men that are swooned over you. Hank Sharp and Ty Randall. They are hankering.
I'm certain Hank Sharp isn't hankering, I said sarcastically. I saw him today at Tammy Jo Bentley's house.
My word!
Dottie jerked back and looked at me.
What on earth were you doing at that woman's house? Don't you know she's a couple buckets of crazy?
Bats had gotten the phone call about the Randall boys, and she was supposed to go to Tammy's to clean, since Tammy is hosting the Kentucky Kennel Association tomorrow. I plucked a set of keys for a camper that was perfect for 1 person and available for a few days. She snarled.
You know, she can be real nasty about that dog of hers.
Fifi, I laughed a belly laugh. I swear, that dog is treated better than a human child. It sure was something to see.
Did you see the dog?
She asked. I did. I think it actually liked me. It was a cute little dog.
Is the puffball at the tip of her tail really shaved?
There was a disturbing giddiness in her tone. Yes, I grinned. I'd heard about what happened at Smelly Dog, and I couldn't stop looking at it. I mean, Fifi has this big puffball here, here, and here, not to mention the several on her legs. I pointed to all the places. We had a good laugh. Seriously, though, did you know that Tammy Jo has a $2.2 million pocket watch on her mantle? I still couldn't believe it. Lines creased in her forehead. Apparently, she didn't have anything to say about that. She's left it to the Fifi and any puppies she has. I couldn't explain enough how crazy this sounded to me. Not a charity or even family.
Mae, she's tighter than a wet bathing suit on a long ride home.
Her red curls bounced as she talked.
She's got family members that she fell out with a long time ago. A daughter.
My eyes widened. Where is the daughter? I asked.
Beats me.
She shrugged, a delicate movement that said volumes. I had a niggling suspicion that she knew more than she was telling. She'd gone back to leaning over the computer on her desk. It was weird that she wasn't gossiping about it. I decided to change the subject. How are the plans for the summer sizzler? I asked, and walked into the storage closet. There were camper sets we let campers rent or purchase. The sets were different depending on what they needed. We had toothbrushes, sheets, towels, bathing suits. I grabbed the deluxe for Bobby Ray. It included shampoos, razors, and all the fixins.
Coming along good. I've got to do some setup over the next couple of days, but it's all ready to go. I put the decorations in one of the storage units, so they're out of the way. We had 4 campers pull in today. I told them about how we do supper around here and invited them to participate. I think I saw 2 of the families head on out to Daniel Boone National Park.
We made plans to hang out tonight at supper before I headed on over to the lake to get Bobby Ray to take him to his housing for the next couple of days. There were a couple different buildings on the property, besides the office and a few covered picnic shelters. We had a recreation room for games and family fun. There was an assortment of video games, ping-pong table, hula hoops, basketballs, dodgeballs, kickballs, jump ropes, and a snack station. There was a laundry room with washers and dryers. Instead of a pool, we had a fishing lake with a fountain aeration system surrounded by a nice sandy beach. On days I was just lollygagging around, I was in a chair with my eyes closed to the sun. It was just a little too hot to do that these last few weeks of summer. The campers must have felt the same way, because the lake was full of swimmers and people circling the lake in pedal boats. I'd been expecting to see my insurance man here any day. He and his wife rented a lot here year-round. I'd asked him to get an insurance proposal together for me about putting in a pool, but I was sure the liability would be through the roof. "Catch anything?" I asked when I walked up to Henry and Bobby Ray.
Nah, we just shootin' the breeze,
Henry said. Bobby Ray was right up his alley. Both men were simple and seemed to enjoy the slow life. "I've got you a bungalow." I dangled the key in the air. "And a job." I took Joel's business card out and handed it to him.
"Which bungalow?" Henry asked. "And what job?"
Henry asked, as if I were giving his job to Bobby Ray. "Number 3. I knew Henry loved that one. Grassel's gas station as a mechanic."
"My favorite bungalow."
Henry smacked Bobby Ray on the back.
"It's perfect for one. It's got the best sunrise and sunset. The view of the park is breathtaking, and Joel Grassel will be a good man to work for. I'm looking forward to it, both of them."
Bobby Ray jerked the line of his rod and rapidly rolled in the reel.
"I'm looking forward to eating this guy."
He pulled in a big-mouth bass that was going to taste great on the open campfire. Bobby Ray was pretty pleased with the bungalow setup. It was a round with a kitchen and bathroom in the middle. It had a perfect view from every window. While I let him get settled in, I jumped into the golf cart to head back up to the office to grab a bucket of supplies to clean Ty's camper like I'd promised Ron. We sold cleaning supplies for the campers to make cleaning easier for them. After I got what I needed, I grabbed Ty's extra set of keys with the T key ring. I couldn't help but smile and wonder what his life looked like as the head chef of some fancy San Francisco restaurant.
"You need help with Ty's camper?"
Dottie asked as a plume of smoke rolled out of her mouth. She was sitting outside under her awning. Her twinkle lights were already on, and she was ready for supper time and enjoying her cigarette. I told her 1,000,000 times she needed to quit. She said it's her one pleasure in life, and who was I to take that away? It was only out of love for her that I wanted her to be healthy. "I think I got it." I held up the cleaning supplies as I realized I wanted to do it myself for some weird reason. She muttered something under her breath that I was sure I didn't want to hear, because she was always rambling on how I needed to find a man when she'd obviously forgotten what the one I'd had done over the past 5 years of my life. Ty's camper was a pull-behind. It was yellow with a red stripe. He paid a lot fee to keep it there. A few weeks after he'd gone back home, I'd gotten a wire transfer for a full year of lot fees. I never anticipated him coming back, but figured his dad and brothers would use it to camp on the weekends. When they were here, it was nice to have the company. For some reason, I had hit it off with his family. I felt bad that Ty's mom had died and left Ron with 2 little boys. They'd had Ty's younger brothers later in life. One was in high school and the other in grade school. My phone chirped a text. It was from Bets Hager. She said that she was happy to report that Tammy Jo was pleased with the cleaning and how much Fifi liked me. She said to hold on to the check and she'd get it tomorrow. I texted her back that I didn't get a check and would go back in the morning to get it on my way to the airport to pick up Ty. As I was unlocking Ty's door, she texted back, "Ty!" followed by a heart emoji. I ignored her and the rest of the gals from the laundry club who texted me right after her. I wasn't sure why they were acting like there was something between me and Ty. In fact, when I first met him, he owed the campground 3 months of lot fees. It wasn't a pleasant exchange, and we certainly weren't an item. He didn't even say goodbye when he left. I opened the door of Ty's camper, and his masculine smell nearly knocked me dizzy. My stomach tickled, and I found myself really excited for his arrival. I gulped back my feelings and got to work. Maybe the laundry club gals did see something I was trying desperately to hide. The inside of his camper was just one room. There was a bed loft on the right that was over top the hookup for something to pull it. There was a small built-in couch with an efficiency kitchen across from it. There was a bathroom along the back, and that was pretty much it, besides a little storage, perfect for a single man like Ty. I found clean sheets and towels in the storage under the couch. After making the bed and doing a light dusting, there wasn't much left to do. Out of curiosity, I started to look through the drawers. There wasn't much in there. Bottle openers, tools, lighters, and some extension cords. There was a red and white striped chair folded up in the corner, and I vividly remembered him sitting in it at night during the spring breeze last time he was here. Not that I was always looking towards his camper. Not always, just sometimes. The last drawer I opened had a yearbook in it. I sat on the couch and flipped through the book. I giggled out loud when I saw Ty and his short hair. I couldn't even think of him without all that shaggy hair he had now. I read through a few of the notes and signatures. There was one that caught my eye. It had a bright red lip stamp next to it. Nikki. I said her name and ran my finger across her lips. "We will always be tied together. Aren't you clever?" I noted and continued to read the rest of her note. "I can't wait to see where our future leads us in college. I love you." I about gagged when I noticed the 3 exclamation marks after the "I love you." I even rolled my eyes a couple of times. I flipped back to the senior photos and dragged my finger along the names on every page until I came to the only Nikki in the senior class. "Nikki Swaggart?" I asked in a hushed whisper, wondering if she was related to Dottie. Had to be. I started comparing myself to this young girl, who probably didn't even look like this now. I mean, I didn't look like I did when I was a senior in high school. Still, she had a long, thin neck and long blonde hair parted to the side. Her smile melted into her blue eyes. Ty had blue eyes. After staring at her for a few minutes and burning her face into my memory, I flipped through the clubs and the candid shots. I had to stop counting how many times I'd seen Nikki smiling next to everyone. Then, the senior superlatives. Best-looking couple went to Nikki Swaggart and Hank Sharp. "Hank Sharp?" I gasped. "This is how Ty and Hank know each other." I wondered if this Nikki was the source of the tension between them. When I heard some rumblings outside of the camper, I looked up and it was beginning to be dusk. I'd let time fly by while I looked at the yearbook and made up things in my head. I threw the book back in the drawer and took one last look around as I gathered up the supplies. "There you are!" Bobby Ray was walking around the corner of the camper when I locked Ty's door behind me. "Who lives there?" he asked. "A camper who doesn't live here but rents full-time. He's coming in tomorrow and needed his camper cleaned." There was no sense in telling him about Ty. I was banking on Bobby Ray not being here long, and he didn't need to know any more about me. "Did you need something?" "Yeah, did you know that I've got to cook something for this campground dinner?" he asked, a little frantic. "Yes, but don't worry. I have some hot dogs you can contribute for us." I motioned for him to get in the golf cart. I had forgotten to explain that every night the campers are encouraged to participate in a progressive supper. Every camper cooks a different food at their campfire. They can take their plate around and sample everyone's dish. Some people do desserts, while others do meats and the sides. It's been a big hit, and it's a fun way to get to know each other. How was the rest of your day? I asked, making small talk.
You've got a good thing going on here,
Bobby nodded.
I really like that Henry. I hope you don't mind me just showing up.
Not at all. I sucked in a deep breath, nearly choking on the late-day heat, in hopes it didn't show that I didn't want him to stay too long.
I gave Joel Grassel a call. We're going to have a meeting in a couple of days. Do you think you could take me?
He asked. I'd love to. Just be sure to let me know when. I parked the golf cart in front of my camper, and we headed inside. I opened the refrigerator to get the hot dogs.
Are those crescent rolls?
He asked. Yes. I took out the can. You want them?
Yes. I make the best campfire pigs in a blanket. That's perfect.
He took the 2 cans I had and the 2 packs of hot dogs.
You coming?
He stopped shy of the door. I'm going to clean up a little. I cleaned a house and a camper today. I smell bad. I lifted up my arm and pretended to smell my armpit. I'll see you in a few. A few had apparently meant the next day, because after I took a long, hot shower, I lay down on the bed for a quick little rest and didn't wake up until the sun was peeking through the open blinds the next morning.